Years old, and I still wake up with a little guy saluting me.
It's the wake-up call with KB and Andy.
Come on, let's wake up.
Gotta wake up.
Are you sure you want to wake up to this?
Come on now, wake up.
I can't wait to wake up.
Wake up, idiot.
All right, a very happy Thursday. It's the wake-up call, KB and Andy. I'm Andy Sweeney. He's Kevin Bowen. Mark Dighton hanging out with you, producing today's effort. We are busy today. What did Chris Ballard say about a litany of issues, of course, including his star running back for now, Jonathan Taylor? We'll get to it. KB, you were there. A good morning as we sit here broadcasting live from the DriveHubler.com studios.
Good Thursday morning. I've said this quite often this week, Andy. That is a Roy G. Biv looking sky. So it is another beautiful day here in Indianapolis. Yeah, I thought Chris Ballard handled things pretty well. There were moments yesterday, Andy, where I'm sitting there like, man, he is just having to clean up for some of Jim Irsay's public comments. We can get more, and I guess indirect.
That's what he gets paid for.
Public comments. We can get more into that. I thought he was extremely honest right out of the gate and saying it sucks. It sucks for us. It sucks for Taylor. It sucks for fans. That pretty much summarizes where this situation is. Nobody's won. There's no signs of this ending anytime soon here. There were a few moments throughout the presser where I'm like, really? I don't necessarily agree with that. Again, we can get into some of those comments. But I tweeted out after the press conference, and I think in summary, according to Chris Ballard, there is still some sort of ankle pain that Jonathan Taylor is dealing with.
Yep.
And when you combine that with 4 wins and the coaching staff change coming off last season, that is why they are not extending him now. Again, we can agree, disagree, whatever, but that is pretty much in summary his stance. And now, as I said yesterday and again said after the press conference, it's time to hear from Jonathan Taylor. I mean, I thought Chris Ballard gave 30 minutes of relatively candid comments, and sure, there's some politician in there as well, but we heard from one party. It's time to hear from Taylor. Whether you want to whip out the Notes app and just, answer your own questions and control the message, I'm fine with that. But we need to hear from him because there were some times yesterday where I'm like, okay, that goes against what maybe Taylor or Jim Irsay.
Oh, sure, yeah. There's another side to the story. By the way, Mark,
said about this.
I don't know if you experienced this, but I heard KB. He said it yesterday. He said it there, and then you said this on with JMV yesterday. Whenever you say whip it out, it scares me. And then you go to the Notes app, which I'm thankful that that's where you're going there. You're going to the Notes app.
Should I have the long pause like we do with the wake-up call with
yes.
KB
and usually if you are whipping out, you are having to write a Notes app right afterwards. Like, I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. I was hacked.
So we will get to a litany of things.
Oh, Mark.
What do we have today? Mike Chappell going to join
Yes.
us 9 o'clock hour. Zach Osterman will join us as Indiana football, obviously very secretive about their kicker, who will probably be used a lot. So college football does start tonight. But obviously, listen, I think there are a few things. I think why they put him on the PUP list. We're going to get to that sound here in a minute. The it sucks sound, we will get to that here in just a second as well. For me, KB, I thought he, like you said, was walking the fine line of saying that this stinks for everybody, okay? And he knows it, you know it, the fans know it, everybody knows it, that it's not good for everybody. I thought he tried to cool things down maybe a little bit by, things are repairable, and so he had to walk a fine line, but in a 30-minute press conference, I did not leave that 30-minute press conference thinking that there's a better chance now that Jonathan Taylor's going to be rushing for the Indianapolis Colts, or that Jonathan Taylor likes Chris Ballard or the Colts right now at all, right? No. I didn't leave that feeling positive at all. I left that feeling just like you said, this is their side of the story. Now, we're going to try to play sound off the computer here. You ready for this?
Sure.
Me and Mark, we're doing this. Mark goes, I have no idea. We've never done this before.
No, Jake had trouble printing off that computer, so playing sound seems like we're going to the moon right here.
I printed something today for the first time in this office. Andy Sweeney printed something for the first time right here. You like that? It's baby steps. We're like an old Big Ten school. 3 yards in a cloud of dust. It may take us some time. Why put Jonathan Taylor on the PUP? He was asked. Here's what Chris Ballard had to say.
As for the decision to put him on PUP, it's when you're still having effects from last year's surgery and still having pain and not 100%, we're not going to put a player on the field that's still complaining of pain in the ankle. We're not going to do that, an injury. I wouldn't do that to any player. Wouldn't treat anybody any differently. So what Jonathan will do is he will rehab his butt off and try to get himself ready to go.
Yeah, and this to me, Andy, when I hear
Is that surprising?
I'm saying, well, again, let's hear from Jonathan Taylor. Because I think throughout this process, I've heard extremely conflicting things on the severity of the ankle injury and how severe it is. And this gets back to the Jim Irsay saying one thing from an anonymous source and Chris Ballard is saying the other. Let's go back to probably now a month ago when it was leaked that there was a back injury with Jonathan Taylor and he might go on the non-football injury list and the Colts might get out from paying him. When Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard have been in front of a mic, I have not heard one back injury comment all offseason long. So clearly that is owner saying one thing, GM and head coach saying another. The second Irsay comment that I feel like Ballard is having to clean up for in a way is, and we'll have Mike Chappell on at 9, and I want to speak for Chap, but I guess I'm going to. Mike Chappell had a story earlier in the week where a team source said to Chap, and Chap's been doing this for 40 years, usually the team source, pretty much the guy signing
pretty good source, yeah.
The checks, and obviously credit to Chap for that. But what was the comment? We feel like Jonathan Taylor's holding in.
Right.
I mean, that was the anonymous comment.
And that's what a lot of people think, right?
And Chris Ballard, again, made it very clear yesterday in a public setting on the record in front of a mic that he does not think Jonathan Taylor is lying. He believes there is still pain in this ankle. So, again, this is the GM going against the owner indirectly, and Jonathan Taylor's the one that needs to speak because he needs to clear up where he's at from a health standpoint, and it would do so much to, I think, just finally put the childish Twitter acts to the side if he were able to go ahead and do that. I'm not holding my breath for it, Andy, but I would like to see that.
Listen, I mean, to me, this is, we have talked about the drama around all of this. Will he play? We've talked about the contract situation. We've talked about compensation. We've talked about them wanting Jalen Waddle. Hell, we can talk Stephen Holder yesterday around 11 o'clock, finally put out the news that the Green Bay Packers, Mark's Green Bay Packers, now they couldn't seal the deal, but Green Bay was the mysterious, second team, but now I feel like...
Can we go there for just a second, by the way?
I mean, we can, but is Taylor still hurt 10 and a half months later? I mean, to me, I haven't been living in the world that Jonathan Taylor's still injured.
Yeah, and...
You know what I'm saying? I know that's a tricky kind of, it's his body. I understand that's a tricky line to walk, but I don't think a lot of Colts fans feel that way, do they?
The hypersensitivity, the word that I've used often with Taylor with his body, has always left that carrot dangling for me of like,
right.
I know. Can't say for sure he's 110% ready to go because, again, it's the first somewhat notable injury of his entire football career. And so that's why I've always kind of, I'm not ready to close the door just yet. Now, on the Green Bay Packers front, frankly, I was shocked by that.
I was too.
So you have Miami and you have Green Bay.
Two pretty good teams. Sorry, Mark.
Two pretty good teams. I don't think we'd consider either of those teams to be top 6 Super Bowl favorite. I don't know. Maybe.
I think Miami would. Green Bay's not there. I think
maybe Miami cracks that. That's probably debatable. But, okay, this is not, Philly, Kansas City, Buffalo, one of those teams. But what I see from both of those organizations is they both are saying we have a young quarterback that is yet to establish himself in this league, and we're going to do everything we can to gauge interest of saying, Tua, Jordan, you have enough around you to show us your potential and to be the franchise quarterback at some point for us and earn that second contract without question. That's what both those organizations are saying. And look at Miami especially.
Yeah, they're loaded.
They already got it.
They're loaded.
Jonathan Taylor seems like the cherry on top of it all.
Well, think about Green Bay. If you had a backfield of A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones, and Jonathan Taylor, I mean, that's what you would have for at least the back end of the season if they made the deal.
And what Green Bay and Miami are attempting with this, or, again, gauging interest here, is what I think the Colts need to be doing. And we'll play the clip here. a little bit later, Andy. It was one of the last questions of the press conference, but it was a question that I felt like we've asked numerous times on the show. How much is this Taylor situation stunting or hindering Anthony Richardson's early development? And the Ballard answer was beyond head-scratching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll
to
get to
me,
that 7:30.
and again, Green Bay and Miami are saying, especially the Dolphins, we've got something. I mean, you know what Colts fans would do for a duo right now of Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill?
I mean, yeah, not just Colts fans. Yeah, just about
you
anybody.
You would walk to Miami.
It's ridiculous.
And, carry, maybe, you would carry them to Indianapolis. And so that's what I think is missing here with the Colts. It's that with two young, unproven, yet to be established is probably the best way to put it, quarterbacks, two organizations are doing their due diligence with this. Whereas the Colts sit here and say, I don't know if we need them.
Yeah, we have 3 wide receivers. That would be part of it. The quote, this is a little bit longer. The quote, this stinks, this sucks, that's the quote that's making the rounds nationally from Chris Ballard. He said that at the very beginning on the relationship with Jonathan Taylor.
I care deeply for Jonathan Taylor. I have great respect for Jonathan Taylor. Our relationship, I would tell you, is, look, even when it gets hard, I won't quit on the relationship. I won't do it. I think too much of the young man. I think too much of what he's given our organization and how hard he's played for us. And what sucks, I mean, the situation, I'm not going to sit here and give you some rosy picture like, oh, this is just, everything's okay. No, it sucks. It sucks for the Colts. It sucks for Jonathan Taylor. And it sucks for our fans. It does. And it's where we're at, and we've got to work through it. And we're going to do everything we can to work through it. Relationships are repairable. They're repairable.
Yeah, we're going to see if the relationship here is repairable. That's one thing coming from the press conference, KB. It's just hard to buy.
Yeah,
it just is.
Yeah, I'll believe that when I see it. It does suck. I mean, that's honest and that's accurate from Chris Ballard. He's right about that. And in a press conference where, it's the last time we're going to hear from Chris Ballard, probably till January, Anthony Richardson's name doesn't get brought up for the first 20 minutes. I mean, that tells you everything you need to know about where you're at. You've just drafted this incredibly unique and scintillating, fascinating, however you want to describe Richardson as a prospect. He's your starter. He's your day one starter, and yet the first 20 minutes are about 98% of things that are not named Richardson. That tells you everything you need to know about the cloud over your organization and where you're at right now. And again, I thought at times yesterday Ballard was having to debunk some Jim Irsay off-the-record comments. And I just don't see that as a healthy spot for your organization there.
Yeah, he talked for 30 minutes. He did about 25 questions, and I would say, we have 2 answers on Anthony Richardson, and one of them is like, are you hurting his growth? So it's not like, that's not like we're praising Anthony Richardson and his arm and his future and everything else.
Obviously, the Taylor storyline is going to dominate things for us here. There were some moments where he did answer other questions.
Yeah, we can get to those. You asked him about Kareem Hunt.
In the course of 3 hours, I think it is important just to touch on that a little bit. Again, Jonathan Taylor, that mystery team there being the Packers. Adam Schefter had some, I thought, pretty aggressive comments yesterday about Taylor and his relationship with the Colts we can hit on as well. It was waiver claim day yesterday, so we will make sure that we run down the 3 new Colts and the corresponding roster moves with one player a lot of people had pegged as kind of a breakout Colt this year. He, along with Jonathan Taylor, will be missing at least the first 4 games of this 2023 season. Tons and tons of Chris Ballard sound to get to. Mike Chappell going to join us at 9 o'clock. Glorious Thursday here in Indianapolis. Wake up call, KB and Andy, 93.5, 107.5.
morning checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
All right, morning check down. Reminder coming up in about 10 minutes. We'll give you some more of that Chris Ballard sound. What did he say yesterday? KB was there. We'll get all of that. College football does begin tonight. Kevin, are you good with that? College football, Florida and Utah. You going to watch any of that?
What's my Thursday nighter?
Florida and Utah.
That is Florida at Utah,
yes,
correct?
And Utah's quarterback Cam Rising is out for the game. That's according to ESPN's Pete Thamel. Utah favored by 4.5. Florida won that game in the Swamp last year. That was, game number 1 for Anthony Richardson.
I love to see an SEC school traveling to Utah like that.
Would you want to see an SEC school lose? That's the question.
Well, sure.
Well, there you go.
That would be the cherry on top.
That's what I figured.
That's a nice little Thursday night opener.
You're damn right it is. That's a good Thursday game. You had a good winner last night. Now, I did hear during the break Mark was listening to some sort of Reds play-by-play.
Thought I was dreaming. Mark, was that a
sound.
positive Reds clip you were about to
De La
play?
Cruz goes.
Oh.
Pitch in, throw down. Steer breaks for home. Throw to the plate. Head first line. Save. Delayed
go.
double steal. You called it, Cowboy. And the Reds take the lead, plus a man in scoring position with 1 out.
We call that an August 30th must-win by the Reds yesterday.
Is it a must-win? I had a buddy that had that isitamustwin.com. He had that domain for a while. I think someone bought him out of it.
Yesterday counted. Day off today for the Red Legs, and then the series of all series with the Cubbies coming up, a 4-gamer. Yeah, you got to win that series.
Yeah, Reds won 4-1. They were 5-5 on the road trip. So, could have been better. Could have also been worse.
Speaking of the Cubs.
That one redirects off the pitcher's leg. Monasterio, save! And the run scores! Cubs have the lead, 3-2.
Big series by the Cubs.
Was that Bellinger?
That was
Cody
big.
Bellinger.
That was big by Chicago. Again, they are squarely right now in that second spot in the wild card, and kind of a quiet day now in Major League Baseball. Indians lose yesterday to Buffalo. Next up for Team USA, it'll be Montenegro. Another early tip tomorrow morning as they move on to the next round. We've gone from 32 to 16 in the World Cup. It'll be Montenegro tomorrow, Lithuania at 8:40 on Sunday. Basically, as long as the U.S. wins tomorrow, they should be in the final 8, which is when you get into the quarterfinal, semifinal, and championship, win or go home at that point. So that's next up for the United States in the World Cup.
I got to do this. Romeo Langford signs an Exhibit 10 contract with the Utah Jazz. How about that? You know why I bring that up? Because, yes, people may care here in the area. I have in front of me this sound I have not listened to in years. Do you want to listen? This is the Romeo Langford pastor when he committed to Indiana. Do you want to hear any of this?
This might take 2 hours.
Romeo is kind of like Abraham Lincoln.
That was quite the moment, wasn't it?
I had to dig that sound up of years and years.
I remember him dominating
ago.
that.
You're damn right he did.
Conference. So Exhibit 10?
Exhibit 10.
Non-guaranteed, minimum.
Yeah, I read up on it. They can make it into a 2-way deal, or they can just ditch him and not owe him anything. Yeah.
So a lot for him to prove here.
Yes.
Coming up in training camp. Other items of note. Quite the scene last night in Lincoln, Nebraska. That women's volleyball game between Nebraska and Nebraska-Omaha. 92,003. You got to love the 3 added on to the 92,000 there. The largest crowd ever for a women's sporting event. Unbelievable. The intros. My wife played high school volleyball. She absolutely loved seeing that scene. It was a sea of red, of course, in Nebraska Stadium. Fever back in action tomorrow. And if you're looking ahead to this weekend, we've got 2 IndyCar races left. It'll be Portland on Sunday. 3 o'clock, our coverage begins right here on The Fan.
Last one for me, Joe Burrow back at practice. That's a big one. Not only the injury, but people think he might want a contract. He's going to play the year, but he wants to get paid as well.
On the other side, let's get back into the Chris Ballard audio. Some comments from him yesterday. Nodding your head at him, disagreeing with them, and also the new waiver claims by the Colts. 3 new Colts added yesterday, some corresponding roster moves. We'll dive into that as well. It's the Wake Up Call, KB and Andy right here on 93.5, 107.5.
Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
We were talking during the break. We heard that commercial there, Dave Chappelle coming to Indy. How about that? I've seen him like 5 times. That's one of those things, KB, where there's a bunch of sports radio guys and radio guys in general that think they could do stand-up comedy. Now, you don't come across as one of the guys that feels that way.
No,
I
think I'd be booed off the stage quickly. We did one time have a last place in the fantasy league, and all of a sudden you have to do stand-up comedy if you get last place in the fantasy league. So we did an open mic night, and let's just say the guy that got last place. We got some awkward looks. Because, like, you go to those open mic nights, and they're, like, people legitimately trying to make it.
Oh, sure, yeah. It's not a joke to them. It's not a fantasy football hijink
I know, and we were
them.
there as a joke, so I kind of felt bad. I was like, oh, boy, we are walking on eggshells in here.
All right, it's the Wake Up Call. KB and Andy hanging out with you until 10 o'clock. We have a busy 9 o'clock hour. Mike Chappell going to join us. Zach Osterman as well. We continue to react, and we talked during the break on where we want to go here in the 7:30 segment. Again, for me, and we will continue to play this as we go, but Chris Ballard, I thought, walked the tightrope of understanding this is not a good situation. It's not a good situation for him. It's not a good situation for his team. It's not a good situation for you guys, the fan, and we've talked about that. I did not leave his 28-minute press conference, KB, feeling any better that he and JT or the two sides were going to get together and be nice. That doesn't mean that JT eventually will not play here or play football somewhere else, but it did not do too much for me, and I thought he confirmed as well that, hey, we put him on the PUP list because, his body still ain't right. It's been 10 and a half months, and that's still the case.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to sprinkle any magic fairy dust on this, and all of a sudden, boom, Jonathan Taylor's playing week 5, week 6, something like that, or a multi-year extension is just going to fall out of the sky. So a ton more to repair, to use the Chris Ballard word yesterday, from this relationship. And I look at it right now and think, again, it's time to hear from Taylor. I thought Ballard handled things just fine yesterday. I thought it was important to hear from him. There were some moments there where I thought he was pretty candid, some other more of a politician type responses, which I get. You can't be totally like open book with a lot of this. But still, I think now it's time to hear from Taylor, because I think here in the last few days, few weeks, it's been a little bit more childish from Taylor with the cryptic Twitter, social media stuff, and frankly, just expected more out of him.
Now, I'm looking. NFL Network has Ballard up there, some of the snippets, and we'll play some sound here in just a second. Ballard goes with the hat. I feel like he has pretty elite hair for him to go with the flat bill with a little bit of a bend to it. Do you have any? Does you or Mark have any thoughts on this? These are the things that I see.
He's a pretty big hat guy. They just had practice yesterday, so rocking the hat at practice and then just sliding into the media room after that. So. Yeah, he is. He certainly has some hair.
How was the media scene there? Because I need to be out to what is there? Are there tiers? We always do tiers of teams. I mean, is it Chappell's up front with Holder?
Sure. Oh yeah.
How does where are you at in all of this?
I'm a row 2 guy. I'm not.
You're a row 2 guy. Okay.
Not a row 1 guy. Chappell, Holder, Joel Erickson.
Okay.
In row 1, I thought they weren't. I thought honestly the half-hour press conference went pretty well. It's not like they were back and forth where all of a sudden the pressers derailed. Again, there were some non-Jonathan Taylor related comments that I do want to hit on, probably a little bit more in the 8 o'clock hour, because, there were some things of, okay, why was Darius Rush cut? What do you think about your offensive line depth and how inexperienced that group was? He talked about the whiteout situation. We saw later in the day Jelani Woods goes on injured reserve. What does that mean? What's different about Jelani Woods on IR versus Jonathan Taylor on PUP? So I do want to hit on that at some point here a little bit later.
You asked the question later on in the press conference about stunting the growth of Anthony Richardson. That was you, right? That was you, was it not?
Yeah,
or was it a KB sound-alike? It was you, right?
Yeah, that was me, and it's a question that I've brought up so much on the show. So I felt like it was needed to be thrown towards Chris Ballard because, again, my biggest issue with all of this, when you hear Chris Ballard say it sucks, it's awful, it sucks for the Colts, it sucks for fans, it sucks for Jonathan Taylor, that's my whole premise.
Right.
This is not a good situation for anybody involved, and I throw Anthony Richardson into that group. Now, Ballard's response, not necessarily along those lines.
Look, when you don't have a great player, but I don't think it stunts his growth. No, not at all.
couldn't help though.
But it doesn't, I mean, I don't know. Did it stunt Andrew's growth without a special back?
It's where I disagree with Ballard the most.
I was dumbfounded, frankly, when he said that.
You can't compare Andrew Luck and Anthony Richardson. You just can't do it. Anthony Richardson's played in 13 games.
Andrew Luck, 2-time Heisman Trophy runner-up, took home the Maxwell Award, the Walter Camp Award, the Johnny Unitas Award, was in whatever sentence there is with Peyton Manning and John Elway exiting college as the can't-miss, must-take number one overall. Anthony Richardson, a lot of people probably didn't even peg him as a first-round pick until the Combine. So this goes back to the number 5 for the Colts is unlike anything that's entered the NFL, particularly as a top 5 draft pick at quarterback. And you cannot compare him to anyone else, let alone Andrew Luck exiting college and the readiness of Andrew Luck exiting Stanford versus Anthony Richardson leaving Florida. And Andy, I think fans of the Colts will realize there's a lot of arguments in the Luck era that you didn't do enough around him. You know, over time, whether that was through the offensive line or that was through skill position players, you didn't do enough to support him. So I couldn't have disagreed more with that Andrew Luck comment there. Trying to compare the Andrew Luck collegiate resume to the Anthony Richardson collegiate resume and their readiness in the NFL, that's like comparing right now Usain Bolt to Rosie Bowen in terms of their speed in a 100-meter dash.
Here's just what it is. I know there's a segment of the fan base, KB, that's like, well, what's he going to say there? I've always got that over, and I'm sure you have in your radio career. Well, what's the coach going to say? What's the owner? What's the general manager going to say? But Chris Ballard is not, there's a great probability that he's not right here. And I understand what kind of nuclear bomb would go off if he said yesterday at the end of that press conference, well, this is absolutely going to affect Anthony Richardson. It's going to stunt his growth. He's not going to be the player early on in this season or the entire season because JT's not there. So, there is a small sliver that, yes, of course he's not going to say that, but they can't really feel that way. And then it goes back to what I said. What did I say yesterday through all of this? I just wanted to throw it out there. Do the football guys feel that they can figure it out with Jonathan Taylor? Does Shane Steichen feel, and his coaching staff, and Chris Ballard feel as the general manager that, hey, Jonathan Taylor's a great player. We ain't denying that. But we are smart enough. Shane Steichen, I am good enough at coaching offense, at coaching quarterbacks, at scheming Kevin Bowen. I am good enough at this that we will be, yes, we may not be as good, but we'll be fine. We'll be able to mask what Jonathan Taylor, but there can't be a Colt fan that feels that way, that what Chris Ballard said yesterday. Not one.
Yeah, going back to what you just said there, Andy, of like, okay, what should Ballard say to that response? Obviously, the Luck analogy, I assume that wasn't on the talking point sheet. I don't think that would have been a wise thing to try and respond with. Where I think I walk away from that shaking my head as much as I did, and I think the response from a majority of fans was very similar, is a comment like that, Andy, backs up what so many people have as an issue for Chris Ballard in his now 7th year as a general manager. In general, you have lacked skill support for your quarterbacks.
Is it arrogance? Is it arrogance?
And I say that plural. Stubbornness is the word that I've used quite often. Arrogance is probably, a decent synonym for that. And so that's where the issue lies, is those words have backed up the actions. Because in my opinion, over these 7 years, there are not enough times where you've walked into a Sunday afternoon game and I've sat there and thought, man, the Colts have got the better skill group here. No questions asked. The Colts have supported their quarterbacks when, again, outside of maybe Luck in 2018, I don't think you've ever thought you've had some top 5, top 7 quarterback. Certainly in recent years, you haven't even sniffed that. So that's where I look at that comment yesterday and think, man, it's one thing for fans to sit here and be like, Lamar Jackson didn't have a a great rookie running back next to him. Cam Newton didn't have some running back next to him early in his career. Josh Allen didn't have some running back. But throwing Andrew Luck in there?
Kevin.
I had to cut that.
Kevin.
Just save that, Mark. You can put that in. You can put that in your file.
Usually hasn't
Ballard
gone
and
full,
Kevin stuff.
Usually hasn't gone full Kevin. Didn't he go Bowen at the combine, Mark?
Yeah.
I don't
Someone
remember.
said, can read or listen to Bowen.
Someone said, I'm shocked he didn't go middle name. Do you know my middle name, Andy?
Oh man, I have no idea what your middle name is.
You'll
Not
never get it.
not one idea.
You'll never get it.
There's 4 O's in my middle name.
There's 4 O's in your
4
middle
O's.
name.
The only vowel is an O.
Oh, dude, I don't even know where to even start.
Is this a Scrabble game?
No,
Is this Wordle for Harvard students?
Dude, I have no idea. What is it? 4 O's.
Woohoo!
Is that?
Look at that, Mark Dykton. Great memory by Mark. My mom's maiden name. My mom is Colleen Donahue.
Oh, okay.
Kevin Donahue Bowen. Donohoo.
Okay, I don't know why I wrote that down, but I did. I wrote it down on my sound sheet today.
You brought it up, so I guess let's just touch on it. And I don't want to hit on it very long, Andy.
Okay.
Chris Ballard, in all likelihood, will not talk again with the media until the season ends. So I looked at yesterday as the final time we get to meet with Chris Ballard until probably January. And so that is a moment to where there's been rumors out there of the Colts pursuing Kareem Hunt and making an offer for Kareem Hunt. So in my mind, if they ever sign Kareem Hunt, it would be good to have the general manager on record with an answer about Kareem Hunt and the off-the-field baggage, whatever you want to describe it, that comes with such a signing. So that's why I asked the Kareem Hunt question. The Kevin comment in there is in reference to Ballard's answer to the Kareem Hunt question there.
Well, you want to hear it? I figured you were setting that up. I don't know. I couldn't tell. I thought you were setting me up there. It's 30 seconds. Do you want to hear what he said?
Again, I don't want to hit on it too long, but I guess I'm kind of...
we're here at this point. We've landed.
I know.
We've
Go ahead,
landed.
play
We've
it,
landed
play
at the
it.
Kareem
Walk
Hunt
across the
question.
bridge.
Yeah, go ahead.
What I will tell you is he's been in the league a while. He, of course, I'm not going to get into specifics on what we did and what we didn't do, but I think our track record there is pretty good, Kevin. I mean, I'll never forget when we got slammed for one player we took, and he ended up being a really good member of this community. So I think our track record, any guy we bring into this building, we vet, and assuredly we're going to do everything we can. We're not going to be 100% perfect, but I think our track record's pretty good.
Yeah,
Kevin.
A lot of people ask there, who was he referencing?
Yeah, who was he referencing?
This is a guess.
Okay.
I'm going to go back to Bobby Okereke, who had a sexual assault case at Stanford that eventually was voted down. There was like a 5-person board. I think like 3-2 was voted, or it needed to be at least 4 of the votes. I think I have that right, and it was only 3 of the votes. Again, I'm not going to say any more on it until the Colts make a move. I just think it was important for a Kareem Hunt answer to be on the record.
Because if he gets signed, you're not going to hear from him until after the season. No, I thought it was a valid question.
From the general manager. So, yeah, that's neither here nor there.
I mean, the Kareem Hunt thing, I don't think is going. I mean, do you think that's going to happen?
Well,
I mean, to me, I don't know. I don't feel like that's going to happen.
Zach Moss was not practicing yesterday. Ballard acted like Zach Moss's return will be soon. As of now, it's just the 3 running backs on the active roster. An injured Zach Moss, who hasn't practiced in a month, and then Evan Hull and Deion Jackson. The Colts will practice today at 1 o'clock. That's it till, I believe, Labor Day. I think they'll go out there on Monday for practice. Then they'll go Wednesday, Thursday, Friday next week, and then boom, week from Sunday, you're playing Jacksonville. So if Zach Moss doesn't practice today, Andy, now we're in the boat of, again, is 4 practices with a month break, is that enough for him? With the broken arm?
No, Zach Moss, I don't think is playing week 1. Do you?
With the broken arm, though.
I don't feel that way.
Conditioning-wise, with a broken arm, you would think he'd be able to do some lower body stuff in the last month. So that's why I sit here and think, okay, as long as he can take contact, maybe he is out there. Maybe you're, rotating those 3. But Ballard said they're still looking into some veteran running backs. So Again, we'll continue to see how that plays out.
If you were a defensive player, you just put a club on his arm. You can't do that if you're a running back. They always put the club on the defensive guy's arm,
and they just whack you.
He's running around with a huge
Barry
club on his arm.
Bonds and J.J. Watt's club. There.
Now, do you want to hear the back and forth with James Boyd of The Athletic?
Yeah,
who may be in today.
That was to close it out.
Yeah, that was the final thing. Now, this is the entire back and forth. It's about 50 seconds.
Last time we spoke to you, you said the running back market is what it is. How much do you think the running back position, in particular when it comes to JT's contract negotiations or discussions you all have had, has factored into what he wants or what you think is fair on both sides?
Let me say this. The running back position. The running back market is what it is, but you pay. I've said this all along. Like, I didn't have. Quentin Nelson didn't have a problem playing a guard a lot of money, which other people don't either. When guys are having great seasons and have a chance to really help your football team, absolutely. I mean, the running market is what it is, but look, great players are what they are too. So I think that all works. I think there's a.
Well, in that case, JT's a great player. Why not pay him?
We won 4 games last year. We won 4 games.
So if you couldn't hear James, I mean, he was asking about the running back market at the very beginning. Ballard asked that. Well, you know, it doesn't matter if it's a guard or a linebacker, whatever it is. You pay great players. Okay, if he's a great player and you spent 27 and a half minutes, KB, telling us that Jonathan Taylor is a great player and you love him and it's the relationship and you want to repair things and everything else, then why not sign Jonathan Taylor? I would even say, why not give him some sort of a sweetheart deal this year? And he said, that's because we won 4 games. And to me, that tells you what you need to know. Does it not, that this team is unsure if they want to pay Jonathan Taylor? To me, it tells me that listen to Steichen. The new coaching staff has absolutely an influence, and then on top of it, we won 4 games last year, and quite frankly, you're staring at 5, 6 maybe wins, 4 wins yet again. I hate to be negative like that this season, and that, hey, we have resources and money, and we need to give that money maybe perhaps to other positions, and that can lead to other questions. But to me, that was a telling end. And right after he said the 4 wins,
we won 4 games.
The 4 games, he got up, and that was the end of the press conference.
Let's go right there. Andy, if we did a poll right now on Twitter and we put the Colts will win 4, 5, or 6 games this season, those are the 3 choices. You would get, I would say, a decent chunk that would say 4 wins. You'd obviously have people that would be in the 5-win boat, and you'd have people being in the 6-win boat. But 4 wins, I think, has been just gauging some fan interest. That's been a popular win total for the Colts. So if they win 4 wins this season, does that mean these free agents, none of them will be re-signed? Jonathan Taylor, Grover Stewart, and Michael Pittman Jr.?
I mean, I know. And Grover was asked about, and I mean, Colts fans expect Michael Pittman to be on this football team.
If I listed the reasons why the Colts went 4-12-1 last season, Jonathan Taylor would be...
Well, his absence.
24th on the list, maybe?
Not his play, his absence. I had a Colts fan that say he won 4 games, and he won 2 of them. Jonathan Taylor won 2 of it himself.
Yeah, that one was the other question that I just didn't follow again, why should Jonathan Taylor be blamed for, I had to carry Carson Wentz on my back in 2021, then you went out and thought Matt Ryan was having something left in the tank, and so now I'm getting blamed for that. I guess I'm getting blamed for the offensive line wilting as well. Does he get blamed for Jim Irsay hiring Jeff Saturday and thinking that wins were going to magically fall out of the sky either in that answer? So, that one doesn't check. I think if Ballard had a mulligan at that one, he would throw in the injury with Taylor. You know, he obviously didn't say it in that answer.
Right. He said it earlier in the press conference.
Earlier. Now, this gets into the debate of how hurt is Taylor and why we need to hear from Taylor. Because there are so conflicting things to, he's in Europe getting treatment on the ankle, to, if he put pen to paper tomorrow, Andy, he'd be tilting the rock in practice. So,
the Duke.
Get out the Notes app. The Duke. Get out the Notes app. Answer some questions. Let us know where you're at from this side of it, because we heard from one party yesterday, and credit to Chris Ballard. He spoke for 30 minutes. There are a lot of GMs, Andy, that would have got up there and said one opening statement about Jonathan Taylor.
I'm not talking about it.
Wouldn't have fielded questions.
No, he fielded 25 minutes of questions.
Chris Ballard credit for that. And there, again, a lot of other non-Taylor related questions that I want to hit on as well. But the 4-win excuse, you go 4-12, you go 4-13 this year. Does that mean Grover, Michael Pittman, and Jonathan Taylor all walk? You went 3-13 Peyton's first year. Does that all of a sudden mean, if Peyton's contract was up, we wouldn't have extended him?
Well, the reason, so he doesn't go injury there, and you're right. If he had a mulligan, you can go injury there, and given that Jonathan Taylor's not speaking, that you can, he's not getting his side of the story out there, that you can kind of control that message. But I thought it was the reality of the team doesn't have very much talent.
But again, isn't that a look in the mirror moment at Chris Ballard for building that team?
It 1,000% is. There's no doubt about it. Everything around here is like, if you're a fan today of the Indianapolis Colts, you can checkmate, can you not, Chris Ballard with anything? That, hey, this is your team, right? Well, we haven't been through the Jonathan Taylor stuff, and we're not talking about all the good things on the roster. He said that in the press conference, which we'll get to. All the good things that are happening. We're not talking about Anthony Richardson. We're not talking about guys, and he listed 3-4 guys that are developing into fine NFL players. But I'm like, yeah, but that's not the media's fault. And I don't know if he was blaming, but that's not the fans or the media's fault. That's partially the Colts' fault for this being the drama that it is. To me, it was an admission that we have a lot of building to do. We need to sign a lot of players. And can we sign a lot of players and fill a lot of holes if we're paying a lot of money, to a running back? And then, like you said, he didn't bring up the injury, but we're paying a lot of money to a running back that ain't right after 10 months.
So my question to that would be this, Andy. It's August 31st. The roster building for the 2023 season is all but complete. The waiver claim process just played out. Yeah, you're going to tinker with the back end of the roster guy here or there, but nothing earth-shattering is going to happen between now and the end of the season. And in the 8 months, or I guess it's more like March, so in the 6 or 7 months that you've had to build your roster, the only notable offensive acquisition that is not named Gardner Minshew was Isaiah McKenzie, who for 2 hours yesterday was cut.
Yeah.
So nothing at running back of note, nothing at wide receiver of note outside of Isaiah McKenzie when we talked the free agent route, nothing at tight end, and again, an offensive line group that has probably the most inexperienced depth you're going to find in the NFL, and you're running back the same 5 from last year. So even if you have this staunch stance of we're not extending Taylor because of 4 wins, from a personnel standpoint, they hardly did anything of substance from a veteran free agent standpoint or trades this offseason on that side of the ball. And that's where I think
it's stunning.
Shane Steichen just has so much on his plate. And you've got, after the draft picks contracts become guaranteed of making the 53-man roster, I think you're close to $14 million still in cap space. So you still have that. And this gets back to your sweetening of the pot point for Taylor here in 2023. What if you took 4.3? And let's go back to, was it Scott yesterday, the mathematician who called in? And he also tweeted at me the breakdown of all the incentives on the deal. I actually appreciated it. It was a little easier to...
I need to try to find that.
To follow. But could you do some sort of incentive-laden increase here for 2023, and would that be enough? And again, these are questions...
For Jonathan Taylor.
As well.
Yeah.
And
we're talking to ourselves at this point, right?
Chris
You're exactly
Ballard
right.
at least gave us something yesterday, and the something was this, Andy. 4 wins, new coaching staff. We still feel like there's pain in the ankle. Mm-hmm. Those are the 3. If you want to just boil it down to 3 points that Chris Ballard made yesterday of why he is not extending Taylor. Agree, disagree, whatever. At least we have those points. What we don't have is Jonathan Taylor's side of it. And I think that is an issue in trying to get a little bit of clarity from where these parties are at, because to say they are divided, to say they are far, far away from agreeing on anything would be the biggest understatement.
Yeah, the story's not going to move forward too much now without Jonathan Taylor's side. Chris Ballard went out there. You're exactly right. You may not like it, but he told you why they're not doing the things that they're doing. He talked about the pup list. He talked about the 4 wins. He talked about the ankle and everything else. The ankle, I know we'll get into in the 8 o'clock hour. The ankle, if that's what the Colts feel and that's what they really feel, I'm having trouble buying that. Does that make, you know what I'm saying? I'm having trouble buying anything because I believe Mike Chappell is talking to, people at the head of the organization when they feel like he would go and put the pads back on with Jonathan Taylor if he had a contract. I mean, that's how I feel, even though it's tricky. Several things. In the 8 o'clock hour, do they have enough weapons for Anthony Richardson? That was asked as well. What about the running back room itself without Jonathan Taylor, the franchise tag? There's a ton of things we can get to over the next couple hours.
Yeah, to add to that, I thought the answer to Darius Rush and why he was cut was an interesting one. It was more of a ringing endorsement to another draft pick and less about Darius Rush. I think there were some questions like, what did Darius Rush do off the field? It had to have been something off the field. That was not at all what Ballard said yesterday. And then again, I think a guy that some have pegged for a breakout season, he will be out for the first month of the year. It's not Jonathan Taylor. So we'll touch on that coming up in the 8 o'clock hour. If you guys want to join the conversation, it's at KBowen1070 on Twitter, at the Only Sweeney on Twitter, 317-239-1070. In an hour, Mike Chappell joins us. Wake up call, KB and Andy here on a beautiful Thursday in Indy.
Fun begins noon to 3. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Bring out the love. It's the wake-up call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Yeah, it's a Thursday. Appreciate you waking up with us. It's the wake-up call here on The Fan. You can catch us, obviously, 93.5, 107.5 on your FM dial. You can check us out on the YouTube. I retweeted that. I know several people are always doing that. I need to break open the breakfast bar and see what they're saying about us.
Oh, boy.
Or
They're
what they're
hot
saying
and heavy.
about Jonathan Taylor. That's nothing nice.
I just got a text from a listener saying,
Okay.
welcome to my pulpit, Donahue. Should I have revealed the middle name again?
I mean, you have before. It wasn't
I
like
know.
a big mystery.
Oh, man.
Steven for me, by the way.
Mine's Christopher. I guess now that we're just doing middle names.
You want to give out
Let's
phone numbers next? Let's do that.
Yeah. Now obviously KB gave out his number. The guy texts right to your personal
There are
cell
a lot
phone,
of ways
right?
to contact us. Obviously, the Twitter, DMs, phone calls, email. Yeah,
Many ways.
et cetera.
We'll take a couple calls this hour, 317-239-1070. I know, KB, you wanted to talk about other guys not named Jonathan Taylor that were mentioned and happenings that happened yesterday, so go ahead.
Let's go 10-ish minutes without talking Jonathan Taylor.
Are we allowed to do that contractually, though?
I know, and I say that in all seriousness. Obviously, the Taylor headline speaks for itself, but there were several other questions yesterday, non-Taylor related. Certainly one that I wanted to ask was about Darius Rush, who by the time the press conference started, we saw he was claimed by the Kansas City Chiefs. So Darius Rush, the 5th-round pick out of South Carolina, claimed. Ballard's answer to that, the immediate response was a guy that I think is thoroughly impressed in training camp. So I definitely agree with Ballard on this. The reason that he gave for why Darius Rush was not re-signed, why he was waived, was Jalen Jones, 7th-round pick out of Texas A&M, number 40 for those that have been at Grand Park or have watched the preseason games. And he has had a very nice camp, preseason, all of those things. Where my disagreement comes with the Rush situation, Andy, is you still, in my opinion, have room to carry him.
Right.
Look at the 3 roster moves they made yesterday.
It's not either or. It's not like one of these guys had to
you can
go.
do both.
Right.
You can do both. They cut a defensive tackle named McTelvin Ajim. They cut an offensive lineman named Carter O'Donnell. They put Jelani Woods on injured reserve to return after 4 games. So for all 3 of those, you could have done those respective moves and still kept Rush. Went over this yesterday, but I think it's worth going back to. By waiving Rush, what you did yesterday was take the risk, and clearly, if you hear Ballard's answer, it's nothing negative about Darius Rush in that answer. Nothing negative about Rush. This was not something he did on the field or off the field where they were like, oh man, that's the reddest flag. They thought they could get him through.
Yeah. It's obvious. Yeah, and the Chiefs got him, which is my take, but continue.
So that's where you're at a situation where at a premium position, which is corner, a position where you have no locked-in future. Kenny Moore's in a contract year. None of those young guys have said, oh, yeah, we're going to be starting at corner in 2024 and 2025. It's a lot of young hope at that spot. For a guy in Darius Rush who has played corner just for a couple of seasons, he was initially a wideout at South Carolina. You can keep him. You can cut 6 defensive tackles. Again, a cut of Carter O'Donnell. You've got 10 offensive linemen. You don't need 10. 5 tight ends. Jelani Woods, again, going to injured reserve. So that's where I am thinking to myself, boy, that's an opportunity to let Darius Rush grow. 6'1", runs 4'3". Another thing I found interesting on the Rush situation yesterday, Andy, you had 24 players claimed by NFL teams yesterday. So 24 guys who were cut by other teams were then picked up by other teams. 24. Of those 24, 10 of them were defensive backs. That's a big percentage.
Absolutely.
To one position group.
Absolutely.
So what does that say to me? In a pass-happy NFL, teams are desperate to try and find defensive backs that can stay. and Rush was one of them. So that's where, again, I scratch my head. Jalen Jones, tremendous preseason, but you've got room to carry both of them, and so that's where I would disagree on the Darius Rush front.
I mean, what has to sicken you if you're a Colts fan, and I saw this right, I forget what time it was, but I tweeted it out, is of course the Kansas City Chiefs get them.
I know.
It's not like it's a team that's also rebuilding that gets them. It's a team that's at the very top, and I want you to follow me here. But I know Isaiah Rodgers had the issues, had the gambling issues and everything else. But he goes to the Philadelphia Eagles, and he's going to sit a year. And who knows ultimately, much like Rush, who knows ultimately what happens. These teams, any team, but especially these good teams, they can take a chance, and if it works out, great. And if it doesn't work out, well, they're the Kansas City Chiefs, right? They're the Philadelphia Eagles. They have rosters that obviously are pretty damn good. But I mean, you have the Chiefs getting that guy, which you can't like. If you're a Colts fan, you can't like it. You have Rodgers, who he did what he did, so now he's off your team. It's another corner, and Juju Brents hasn't played in the preseason at all. So there's three guys right there that you put time and effort into. One's on your team, and it's very early in his career, hasn't played. One's with the Eagles, and then Rush, who maybe you thought you could sneak through. Not so fast, my friend. The freaking Chiefs get him.
Yeah, you certainly could have made room for him. Again, Jelani Woods to injured reserve. Andy, that means he's out for at least 4 games.
That hamstring's bad, man.
Yeah, definitely an aggravation of
months.
It in training camp. This dates back to the spring. If there's one position group that I look at right now and think, where could you handle an injury? It's probably tight end, to be fair. But again, this is a guy that was one of the few individual bright spots late last season when you were struggling so mightily and had those historic losses. So I just label this in the bummer category.
Yeah, he's got to blossom. He's got to do something. Like at some point here, we think he's going to do this. We think he's going to do that. It's like Anthony Richardson. We think he's going to be great. Well, he's got to go be great. Jelani Woods, we think he's going to be good. He's got to go be good, right?
Yeah, I think this falls into the category of, man, just a bummer for a skill group that you're looking for guys to emerge at there. Other thing I wanted to mention, the Colts made 3 waiver claims yesterday. None of them for a running back. None of them for a wideout.
That surprised you?
That surprised some people. Yeah, wideout a little bit. They've got 5 of them on the practice squad, so I think they view that as
somebody's
going
to make it. Yeah.
We'll bring one of them up. The new offensive lineman, Ryan Hayes, is an offensive tackle claimed from the Dolphins. He played at Michigan, started 29 games at left tackle there. The other offensive lineman, Josh Stills from Oklahoma State, very versatile guy. Although I think the quick Google search on him, you're going to find he was the name last year during the Super Bowl, Andy. I don't remember if you recall this headline. He had a rape and a kidnapping charge against him. He was later found not guilty of that, but I think he was either at the Super Bowl and was sent home or wasn't allowed to travel, one of the two.
Yeah, it was one of the two.
Based off that, he has played in 1 NFL game. So right now, if you're looking at your offensive line depth, whether it's Arlington Hambright, again, whether it's Wesley French, whether it's Blake Freeland, or now these 2 new guys, your 5 O-line depth guys have combined to play in 1 NFL offensive game. Still's a guy that is just special team snaps. You look at French, no offensive snaps as an undrafted guy a couple years ago. Blake Freeland is a rookie. The new guy, Ryan Hayes, offensive tackle, is a rookie. Arlington Hambright has not played since 2020. So, again, the 5 depth guys, nobody has any sort of experience on that, and that is concerning to me when offensive line injuries can just pop up. Ask Ballard that question. He didn't seem to be too worried about it.
Would you want to hear about the offensive line? I mean,
sure.
we do have him talking about the Pinter injury and the offensive line.
Sucked for Danny Pinter, man. He's one of the really good dudes and really good players and was having a hell of a game and had a really couple of good weeks of practice. So that stunk for him. We think so we've claimed a couple guys that we think are help. I think we got 11 now on the roster. We feel better about where it's at and where we're going with it. They are young, but how do they become vets? I mean, they got to play. So, you want to line up a bunch of you can do that, but I just like it's easier when, especially on the old line. And we've got a couple guys that, have been around, but I just think I got a lot of faith in Tony and how he coaches them and what he's doing. These guys have talent, and you just got to grow with them.
Yeah, listen, KB, I'll be a little bit stronger. I think this offensive line has the highest probability on the team to stink. If we just go say it, listen, that's going to affect the running game. You have running backs that aren't superstars
and
like
you said
Jonathan Taylor.
Of injuries,
yes,
or just the starting five in general.
What we saw last year. This happens a lot. This could happen. Okay, to me, it's talent and it's depth. It's what you've talked about because an offensive lineman's going to be blocking and have his ankle rolled up. He's going to be blocking. He's going to have his knee rolled up. And when we talk about the offensive line, it's always nice to say, well, they struggled last year and they're back this year and they're energized and reinvigorated and everything else. And all of that is fine. And sometimes the pie in the sky is right. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, I think
and that's how I feel about the offensive line.
Is this a youth movement year? Is this a tank year? Is this a play the young guys, don't care about the old guys? No one on this roster is over the age of 30. I can listen to that. I think my stance has been pretty consistent all offseason long. The positions that directly support Anthony Richardson, I want to see a little bit more veteran nature to it because, again, these are the critical years. Defensively, I'm probably good with the youth movement there for the most part, even though outside of the secondary, the front seven I wouldn't consider to be too much of a youth movement right now. But I think you find some balance. You have 5 guys that are the backups and basically none of them played in the NFL. That's a little bit too much on my end. The last guy that they brought in yesterday, this guy is kind of intriguing to me. Isaiah Land.
Oh, yeah.
Now, he comes from Dallas.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about this guy.
And I think something you look for in these roster cutdowns, where would you consider position groups very deep in the NFL? And then you kind of cling to who they have to cut. So, for example, Dallas with Micah Parsons and that edge rushing group, it's one of the better ones in the league. Isaiah Land gets cut from that group as an undrafted free agent out of Florida A&M who had a sack, many hurries in the preseason. He gets cut, and now the Colts have picked him up. And I'm all for, again, darts at a dartboard at the pass rushing spot. At Florida A&M, this was 2 years ago, 19 sacks for Isaiah Land. Obviously a step up in competition, but 19 sacks and 25.5 tackles for loss. Those are some eye-popping numbers. And if you're going to be the small school, Robert Mathis had this. You have to have the crazy, crazy numbers.
Right.
Now, some people question his position fit. He's a little light. Is he a linebacker? Is he a DN? I think that plays into why maybe he fell a little bit.
They call that a tweener in the business, KB, a tweener.
Again, competition-wise, never faced a Power 5 school. So all of those questions are there. But again, these are the type of waiver moves that I think make a lot of sense for me. So Isaiah Land was the third. So 2 offensive linemen and a DN. Those are the 3 new additions for the Colts.
All right, so Land was the one that you could say that I wanted to talk about. He was the one that I thought, okay, there's something here. Dallas has a good front seven, like you mentioned. They don't get to keep everybody because they have stars there, right? You mentioned Micah Parsons. The other thing I do is go to the media of the team that let the guy go. For instance, the Chiefs this morning, they get Rush, and if you're a Chiefs fan, you're not following the back end of the Indianapolis Colts roster, right? You're following your own team and your own roster.
You're not?
And you're following is Chris Jones going to get signed to a deal? By the way, JT is totally Jonathan Taylor has put a blanket over the fact that Chris Jones is still for a week and change away, still hasn't signed and got a contract extension with the Chiefs. Regardless, the media for the Cowboys were sad to see Isaiah Land go. Ed Werder was sad to see Isaiah Land go, and a bunch of bloggers were like, oh, they wanted to keep him. I think the Cowboys thought he might go to the practice squad. I can't remember if Ballard talking. Did he talk about Land yesterday?
Yeah,
I know.
Did.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they liked him in the process, right?
Yeah.
And then they just never got to take him because of whatever reason. But to me, hey, listen, to me, this is the guy to kind of watch. The Cowboys Cowboys wanted him. The Cowboys wanted him at least to be on their practice squad. He had a good preseason, and to me, that was a bright out of all the crap and the doom and gloom and everything else. I thought this was a potential bright spot yesterday for the Colts.
And again, I know we're getting deep into the roster right now with some of these comments, but these are the 3 new guys the Colts brought on. If you go back to the preseason, Andy, Jake Witt, offensive tackle, Titus Leo, defensive end, 2 late day 3 picks, both now on injured reserve. They both suffered different injuries. They're on injured reserve. So in Isaiah Land and Ryan Hayes, they're not the exact same sort of projects, but these are kind of your new versions at the same positions of, day 3 undrafted type picks, and you take a chance, and in particular, Land is one that I think it'll be interesting to watch.
We're doing Isaiah Land talk at 8:15. You never thought that was going to be the case, did you?
We just went 17 minutes without a Jonathan Taylor mention.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm sure our bosses are not happy about that.
This from Ben.
Okay.
Dan Kevin, I've been a Ballard defender, but when you say it so bluntly
Really?
as to what he did to improve a 4-win team, and it's adding a backup quarterback only, I'd fire him today. Taking away the best player from a 4-win team doesn't seem like a way to get more W's. Again, going back to what we talked about in the prior segment, if you look at the offensive personnel moves that they've made outside of Isaiah McKenzie, there was nothing from a veteran free agent standpoint there, and Gardner Minshew, of course.
239-1070. Let's go to the phone lines here on The Fan. Kurt, you lead us off this Thursday morning. Kurt, what's happening?
Hey, good morning from Arkansas. How are you guys?
Oh,
beautiful
Pig
Arkansas,
Suey.
Kurt.
Yeah.
How you doing, man?
You an Arkansas fan?
No, I'm born and raised in Indy, and
Okay.
I've done 9 relocations, so representing Indy down here in the south.
There
Him
you
and
go.
Jake used to work at the O'Malley's there on the east side of Indianapolis. That's
Okay.
I was about to say
All right,
that
all right.
that's Kurt's claim to fame, but that'd be so disrespectful. So I apologize, Kurt.
That's all right. Hey, I just was going to make one comment. In KB, I was thinking I maybe heard Ballard's comment about Taylor's ankle differently. I think you had said it seems like Ballard believes that Taylor's injured and that this is not a hold-in. But, boy, to me, I heard it almost like a carefully drafted legalese statement from his lawyer. I only read it on the Star, and I didn't listen to the whole press conference, but it sounded like he said, Jonathan Taylor says he has pain in his ankle from the surgery. And then he kind of repeated it a second time. We're not going to put a player out there if they say they have pain in their ankle or if they say they have pain. So I almost think he put it all on Jonathan Taylor. So I wasn't sure if he was believing him or not.
Yeah, okay, that's an interesting way, Kurt. Let's play that clip. Thank you for the call, by the way, Kurt. Andy, do you have that clip?
Yeah, let's go. Here's yesterday, yeah.
As for the decision to put him on PUP, it's when you're still having effects from last year's surgery and still having pain and not 100%, we're not going to put a player on the field that's still complaining of pain in the ankle. We're not going to do that, an injury. I wouldn't do that to any player. Wouldn't treat anybody any differently. So what Jonathan will do is he will rehab his butt off and try to get himself ready to go.
I mean, it does say, JT complaining. Let me see if I can find it again. Complaining of pain.
We're not going to put a player on the field that's still complaining of pain in the ankle.
Yeah.
But it goes back to what you said.
And this is the gray area.
People don't believe that. Jonathan Taylor, do you have pain in your ankle? And only he can answer that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw someone tagged him in a tweet.
Oh, I'm sure.
We need to hear from you. Yeah, I'm sure that's going to all of a sudden spark something. So, again, Jim Irsay, in my opinion, from an anonymous source standpoint, believes it's a hold-in. And I think he told our 9 o'clock guest that. Coming up, Mike Chappell going to join us at 9. For what it's worth, Chris Ballard didn't even go there. Now to Kurt's point, I'm sure you can listen to that comment and say, well, in a very legal, respectful manner, that's Ballard saying it. It's Taylor going on PUP. Like that, if Taylor wants to be traded, does he view that as kind of the best avenue? Because, how should you view this if you're Taylor? Are you trying to prove your health to other teams?
That's so with Miami, I've struggled with that for the last 3 days, KB.
And
that question right there.
I wish I had more conviction one way or the other.
Know.
But if I'm Miami or Green Bay, do I look at this and say, hey, Jonathan Taylor's practicing. Hey, Jonathan Taylor just ran for 88 yards and averaged 4.6 whatever, 9 per carry. Let's give him, a little bit more of a sweetener deal on that contract, and let's make that trade. Or do these teams view it as, no, if he gets deeper into the season and he's not playing, that's now less games that we get him for this season, and that devalues him a little bit more. Like, it's all very confusing in how teams view his medical situation, his value, whether they think the value is going to increase or decrease. Because in the Christian McCaffrey case last year, I think you could make a pretty strong case that Christian McCaffrey, Andy, entered last season with more injury history than Jonathan Taylor enters this year.
Oh, I would not. When they traded for Christian McCaffrey, I was stunned because I was thinking, this guy's going to miss 8 games every single season.
Played 10 total games in 2020, 2021. 5 different injuries cost him to miss at least 4 games each time. And then all of a sudden, the 49ers are 3-3, and I guess they were...
Well, they're panicked.
They view themselves as desperate, panic, and they make that trade. So, if you're the Colts, do you think that team's going to rise this year? And again, McCaffrey played in every game, though, up to that point. Taylor's not going to be given
He's missed 45 practices, or whatever it is.
Opportunity. I did want to get to this from Field Yates. We mentioned earlier the Colts did not add a wideout from a waiver claim standpoint. Field Yates goes, the most popular player claimed on waivers yesterday was new Cardinals wideout Elijah Higgins. Again, the Cardinals were sitting at number 3 in the waiver priority. The Colts were at 4. 5 teams tried to claim Higgins. The Cardinals, the Colts, the Titans, the Commanders, and the Packers.
Interesting. That's
every
interesting.
other player, again, 24 were claimed. Every other player but one, a guard that the Texans claimed, did not have multiple teams trying to claim them. So Elijah Higgins. So the Colts did try and get a wideout in here. But
they just weren't bad enough.
They were not bad enough. Boy, that is a great way.
Even 4 is not good enough. Sorry, Ballard. I want to say one thing. Again, 239-1070. Mike Chappell going to join us coming up at the top of the hour. Zach Osterman, a few minutes, will join us in the 9 o'clock. About 9:30 or so, we'll talk some IU football with him. For me, I feel like, at least my time on the show, we haven't really talked about this because it's been the gray area. We haven't heard from JT. It's been all these things. But when you hear, hang on.
We're not going to put a player on the field that's still complaining of pain in the ankle.
Even then I could throw it your way where JT could be healthy, but but is not going to work with the Colts here. And so the conversations that they have, but let's take it at face value for a second. And listen, it's difficult to do. I understand the majority of people think if he got 3 for 39 or he got a contract that made him happy, that he would be playing for the Colts or the Dolphins or the Packers or somebody else. What if the medical stuff is this much of a problem?
Well,
I mean, we need to talk about it, that if it's 10 plus months later and he actually is telling the Colts and it's actually, KB, the truth.
Then you got a different issue.
Then I'm not right. And listen, 2 teams, no one made a big offer to the Colts. Does that mean that they view him as someone who is not healthy as well? And that goes to JT needs to play football so he can prove these things. That was my take a couple years ago, but I don't think we've put enough effort into what if this injury stuff is real? What if Jonathan Taylor is not right? And how does that change your analysis, my analysis, the fans' thoughts on Taylor and on Ballard and on them not trading him and him being on the PUP list in the entire saga? Because I feel like the starting point for the saga for the majority of people, KB, is he's not injured. This is just a pissy match between the Colts and Jonathan Taylor and his agent, right?
Yeah, obviously any injury, let alone one that is not supposed to take 10 months to recover from, for a running back when it's lower body, if that is a real, true story to this degree, that is very notable. I'll stand by something that I've said throughout the offseason, though, Andy. I think if Jonathan Taylor was healthy, I still don't think he would have been compensated in the way he wants to be compensated by the Colts.
Well, I would agree with that, yes. I don't disagree.
When you hear the last answer to the press conference of why not pay great players, and he says 4 wins from last season and doesn't mention the injury.
We won 4 games.
That, to me, is a little bit more of a this is where our stance is. I know he mentioned the ankle and all of that. I don't think it's as much health related. They've paid injured guys before. They paid.
Listen, they
Darius
have.
Leonard
I
when
know.
he had missed
I know.
10 practices.
I know.
So I think if healthy, this is their stance. On the other side, there is that mystery team that Stephen Holder talked to us about yesterday. It was revealed. We'll explain what I think that means, the fact that it is Miami and it is Green Bay. What does that mean on that end? Get more from some of the Chris Ballard comments from yesterday. Before all of that, let's lead off a morning checkdown.
The Morning Checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
All right, Reds winners last night. Congratulations to UKB 4-1. That does snap a 3-game losing streak. The Redlegs now 1 game back for that final wild card. The Giants lead. And then Arizona a half game back as well. The Reds finished that road trip, the out west road trip at 5-5.
Was it really 5-5?
It was.
They did beat the Angels.
They did.
They?
Yeah, they cleaned up the Angels and then the ones that kind of wanted to win. But they didn't lose too much. I mean, to me, they come out of this only 1 game back. That's not bad. The Diamondbacks did lose last night, 7-0. Mark's Cubbies with the big win over the Brewers, 3-2.
Team USA, they get back in action tomorrow morning. So Tyrese Halliburton and company, Montenegro, the opponent there. As long as they win, they should get to that final 8, which is when you get into the one-and-done format of the quarterfinals, semis, and finals. They'll play Lithuania coming up on Sunday morning. And what a cool scene last night in Lincoln, Nebraska there. For the volleyball match between the Nebraska women's team and Nebraska Omaha. You had 92,003 people in the building for that one. It's the largest ever sporting event for a women's event. I say this in all seriousness, and insert your jokes about what else do you do in Nebraska. Why is volleyball so big in Nebraska?
Don't look at me. Ask your wife. She played volleyball.
I know, and I asked her, and
I sure as hell don't know.
I don't. She didn't have a great answer.
It's a very popular sport, man.
Like, why Nebraska? I mean, if it was going to be an indoor sport, I would say why not like more of a colder weather state. I know Nebraska's not necessarily balmy by any means, but like, was it invented in Nebraska?
I don't think so. That would be an odd place for the invention of volleyball. Would be.
And am I an idiot for asking that question?
No, you're not an idiot. I don't have any sort of an answer. I have no answer whatsoever.
They love their Cornhuskers.
You damn right they do.
That was an awesome scene.
Yeah, I'm not a Matt Rule fan. Whatever, we'll see.
Matt, you don't think he's gonna get it done there?
No. Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I think he got a little overrated when he went to the NFL. Everyone act like Matt Rule was going to
here during the Frank Reich.
I understand he interviewed for my Giants. I think Frank Reich's was a better pick, even though he got fired, and Brian Dable as well. Quickly, Joe Burrow back at practice. Romeo Langford signs an Exhibit 10 contract with the Utah Jazz. College football tonight. Florida at number 14. Utah quarterback Cam Rising is doubtful for that game. ESPN's Pete Thamel reporting that. We'll have that game 7:30 right here on The Fan.
Did you say the line?
4.5.
Where are we going?
Well, if Cam Rising were playing, I'd take Utah 4.5, and I'd feel really, really good about it. But that kind of scares me. I'll still take Utah.
We've got Nebraska at Minnesota tonight as well. That's
okay.
On Fox. Minnesota favored by 7 in that one. And then tomorrow, actually, we don't have a lot. Chris Ballard's son for Kansas. They take on Missouri State. Stanford at Hawaii tomorrow.
There you go. Stanford loses that game, then gets to join the ACC right after that. Is that how it works?
We will talk a little IU football coming up with Zach Osterman. He joins us in about an hour. Mike Chappell at the top of this 9 o'clock hour. On the other side, again, what does that mean? Green Bay and Miami, how should that be viewed that they wanted to pursue Jonathan Taylor? We'll touch on that. It's Wake Up Call. KB and Andy here, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
Wake-Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, there is something that is bothering me a little bit that I just wanted to get to that bothered me yesterday with Chris Ballard's press conference, KB, and that is I feel like we didn't get the look and the freakins that I was that I was promised. Now we did get like one.
Freaking good.
Okay, like that's the only one I remember, and I was just thinking the over/under for look and freakins were going to be in the 20s, and I kind of I only got a few of them, so. I blame you guys. I blame Mark and I blame KB for that. You guys set me up for failure. I was going to cut every single time he said freaking. We were going to have a nice little expose we could play, and we don't have anything. I got one of them.
Freaking good.
Yeah, we're closing on a house. I don't want you to be, like, if you're playing a drinking game, you'd have been hammered if he went on his usual look and freaking spree.
We definitely did not get as much as we typically do on the Ballard Bingo Card. Some people have asked me about this, Andy, in the last 24 hours.
Okay.
Is there more to Jonathan Taylor's frustration stemming back to last season? And I do think there is some of, in my first, and again, this is me kind of talking for Taylor, in my first major injury situation of my football career, a very nagging start and stop injury situation, I played through a lot in a really poor season to try and help this team when Matt Ryan clearly was the issue, and I'm not being acknowledged enough for that. I do think that's some of it. But again, this is why we need to hear from Taylor. He wasn't crazy vocal about that in June, which is the last time we've heard from him. But look, if you've got real venom, talk about it. Talk about it in a candid manner. And for the most part, Ballard fielded everything yesterday. It's not like he commented a whole lot. I mean, sure, he's not going to get deep into the contract stuff, and I don't think anybody realistically expects that. But you heard from one side of this story, and I don't count Jimmer saying this. You heard from Ballard, and now it's okay. When are we going to hear from Taylor? Now the mystery team. Stephen Holder,
the mystery team,
talked to us about it yesterday. He said it was an NFC team. I was very surprised when he said it was the Green Bay Packers eventually. And when I look at the two teams that had the most interest in Jonathan Taylor, I look at Miami.
Yep.
And I look at Green Bay. And again, I don't think you'd label either of those teams like top 4 or 5 teams in the league right now. Obviously from a recent playoff success, neither of them have had deep runs. Green Bay, of course, has always been kind of a what-if thing. But in Tua and Jordan Love's case, they are two yet-to-be-established quarterbacks. You could say unproven, obviously, in the Jordan Love case, much more than Tua. But, Andy, I look at that, and it's two organizations coming together and saying, all right, let's make sure that we go above and beyond. Let's make sure we look into this. Can we support our quarterback even more with the skill talent around him? In particular, Green Bay's case. I mean, you look at their running back situation, I would think Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon be a pretty darn good duo there. So I find that interesting. And it also kind of falls in line with where I think the Colts need to be in this. Of you have obviously in Richardson's case, extremely young and unproven quarterback, and didn't even have the collegiate success, obviously, that Tua had, the college starts that Jordan Love had. And the Colts need to make sure that they go above and beyond in trying to support him. So Miami and Green Bay's interest, to me, is how the Colts need to be viewing this as well, of saying, what could he do for us? What could a 2 or 3 year run with him, front load the contract, get into year 4 of Richardson when you have to make the first big decision on him? What can that do? That's where I look at Green Bay and Miami and think, yes, that is the thought process I think the Colts need to be having in trying to bolster or secure whatever skill talent that they have.
I found it to be quite shocking that it was the Green Bay Packers. And then if you look at where they are contractually with A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones, remember what Stephen Holder told us yesterday? Now, even though it was a couple hours later, the story comes out, and I don't know, he did the reporting there. I don't know if, Green Bay was starting to leak out that they were the second team, and Holder's like, yo, I got the information. I'm going to get I'm putting this up on ESPN.com. But A.J. Dillon is what? He's in the final year of his.
Him and Taylor are the same draft class.
Yes. He is in the final year of his deal, and he's not the player, obviously, of Jonathan Taylor. And so that's the A.J. Dillon side. And then Aaron Jones, if you remember, Aaron Jones this offseason took a pay cut around $5 million. Now, he is signed through 2024, but if you go to Stephen Holder's article on ESPN.com, he's due to make $12 million next season. None of it's guaranteed. And what is he,
29?
Boom. And Aaron Jones is getting to that magical number, okay? And even a couple years ago, remember it'd be like fantasy football people would be all upset because Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams was getting a lot of the touches, and then they brought in A.J. Dillon. And remember, it's like a very full backfield. So you have Aaron Jones, who's inching closer to 30, who you're not going to have to pay very much after this season, who Aaron Jones already knows, hey, I'm kind of devalued anyway, not because I'm a running back, because I took a pay cut this offseason. And you have A.J. Dillon, who's a very fine second running back in that room. He's not a number one. He's a number two. And so if you're the Green Bay Packers, obviously the Wisconsin ties would make. Everyone. It's they would love him there. Look at what that thing's been looking to fall off. By the way, KB's
lost my mic cover there for just a second.
Is that your personal mic cover?
It is. It looks like it's been chewed out from a dog, which I haven't had a dog in 15 years.
I was wondering, do I need to go buy my own? I've just been using this one, and Jake's mouth has been all over it. And my man James Boyd and everybody else. But you can move away from Aaron Jones and get rid of a 29, 30-year-old and get a 24, 25-year-old. And if A.J. Dillon stays, he stays. And, they drafted a running back. To me, you would just go from one solid group of running backs. This year, if he didn't play the entire year, he's going to miss 4 games. If Jonathan Taylor were to miss a 5th game, a 6th game, you throw him in, and suddenly that running back room is great this year. You can take an injury, and it's not the end of the world. You're helping your young quarterback. And then next year, you usher in the Jonathan Taylor era in Green Bay. Makes all the sense in the world now.
Well, the other thing to note, too, Green Bay scheduled to have 11 picks next year. The additional first from the Jets for Aaron Rodgers, a ton of day 3 picks. Again, you'd have to package something to make it look, what the Colts want. Obviously, would you get A.J. Dillon in return? Those sorts of things. Before we get to Mike Chappell at 9, I want to get back to some of that Chris Ballard audio because I think a few of those clips are worth playing again. And some of Ballard's comments yesterday in relation to Jonathan Taylor. We'll do that on the other side here. Mike Chappell joins us in about 15.
Sold on principle, union by choice. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
It's the wake-up call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Reminder coming up tonight on The Fan, Florida and Utah college football. I say the college football season's kicking off. How dare you? Week 0. Sam Hartman played last week. How dare he threw 4 touchdowns. He won the Heisman in week 1.
Slandering Kevin's Irish right now.
How dare you?
You said it, not me.
How dare you? Florida, Utah. Should be a good game tonight. We'll have it right here on The Fan beginning at 7:30. We have a few minutes. Chappell going to join us top of the hour. Zach Osterman will join us at 9:30. Obviously, check out the podcast. It's been for the better part of at least 90 minutes. We've been reacting to all the Chris Ballard, Jonathan Taylor stuff, all the sound and everything else. One other thing I wanted to get to here, KB, if you don't mind. And who asked the question? You said it was Angela. Who was it? Angela.
Yeah, Angela Moyen from Wish TV.
Well, there we go. I got my man Chernoff works at Wish TV.
Yeah, great human.
Do you know him?
Oh yeah, him and I grew up together. He's got a great jump shot.
I love you call him a great human. I like that.
Great human.
That's my name drop for the Indy TV market, as I learn everyone is him. I was supposed to text him this week to get a beer. Obviously, that did not happen. Regardless.
Ghosted him.
I did. That's exactly what I did. I'm admitting that right now on FM radio. Are there enough weapons for Jonathan Taylor? For Anthony Richardson? That was asked of Chris Ballard. Here's what he had to say yesterday.
I still think Michael Pittman's a pretty good football player. I still think Alec Pierece has upside and is a pretty good football player. And we really like Josh Downs. We'll get the rest of it filled out. We're excited about Ogletree. I think you know our thoughts on Ogletree. We've always thought highly. It was a big loss last year. We think Mallory, that was exciting to see, him get healthy and show the flashes that he showed. Granson, Granson's a good football player. Every staff that's come in and every quarterback that's come in's liked him. So it's I know the world paints a bleak picture here, but I don't think it's as bleak as the world makes it out to be.
Can you play the Pierce part one more time?
Let me find it. Hang on.
I still think Alec Pierece has upside and is a pretty good football player.
Poor Alex Pierce.
So is his name actually Alex and we're mispronouncing it, or do they just not know his name?
Yeah.
Mark,
I thought the same thing.
Mark, pull up the Colts roster.
Oh, boy.
Get us some clarification. Can we get Mrs. Pierce on the line? I know she's got a big family, a bunch of D1 professional athletes in that family.
It's with a C. It's
I thought
with
it
a
was
C.
Alec.
It's got to be Alec.
But
I still think Alex Pierce has upside and is a pretty good football player.
Honestly,
Alex Pierce.
That's 2 guys in the front office calling you the wrong name.
Ballard might be playing chess and we're playing checkers here. He's saying if my owner's calling him Alex, I'd better call him Alex too if I want my owner to continue to sign those checks for me here.
All right, let me hear it one more time because I still think he says Alex, but I just want to make sure.
I still think Alex Pierce has upside and is a pretty good football player.
It sounds like an X to me.
I am hearing the X. What? I guess on that answer, Andy, if Ballard says that we need to add more to the skill, then it's an admittance that he hasn't done his job very well. I don't need his words. I've seen the production.
Well, here's the thing.
There's not enough skill support.
Of course there's not.
And there hasn't been enough for, I would argue, in the entire Ballard tenure.
Like here's the thing. We all know this. Everyone being a fan of football and like fantasy football, it's like you go out and you don't draft offensive linemen, right? If you're in fantasy football, unless you're in these crazy leagues, you're not drafting linebackers and safeties. And so sometimes, there are positions on the football field where we have, as the average guy has no idea what the hell's going on. But what do we know? If the skill positions are good enough on our respective teams. Like, you feel that way, do you not? And I've always battled on and I always use NFL teams for this, KB, but on our NBA teams, but a guy will average 21 points a game. I'm sure you guys have dealt with this with the Pacers for a couple years. You'll average 21 points a game, and he may be an all-star, or he's getting a lot of respect. And I'm like, yo, he's on a bad team. Somebody has to, you have to score. Even a bad team in the NBA is going to average 95 points a game, whatever it is. Someone's got to, average 18, 20, 23 points a game. And so when he goes to, yes, Chris, we understand Pittman's a good player. Alec Pierece has upside, and I'm a big fan of Josh Downs and the Josh Downs
Same, yeah.
select.
Josh Downs a lot.
I'm a big fan of that draft pick, but it's like yes, those guys are fine, but you need more. It's the NBA team. Yes, whatever superstar is averaging 22 a game, but you need more of those guys if you're going to be a good team, if you're going to be a playoff team. And I mean, there's no way. He can say whatever. No one's denigrating Michael Pittman at all, okay? What we're saying is Michael Pittman, if Jonathan Taylor's not out there and the tight ends are injured, Jelani Woods, that it's not enough. And I think there's not one person that thinks, that there can't be, in this entire listing area, or if you're like Kurt and you're listing in the great state of Arkansas, the natural state, if you will, that thinks they have enough at the skill position. Not one person.
Andy, Kirk asked me yesterday, name a position group on the Colts roster that's better today than it was 6 years ago.
Okay.
And when he asked that, I paused, and I thought, and I'm still thinking.
I was about to say, what did you come up with?
And I don't know if I have great answers for you. Maybe make an argument that, I don't know, is the offensive line better than it was at the start of the Ballard era? I think so, but last year is such a sore eye on the entire unit and how that's viewed. I struggled with that answer.
Okay, so what season are we going to here? What season do I need to go back to? Like 2017 roster?
I would assume if you go back to kind of just the start of the Ballard era. I mean, you probably have to go back to 2016 before Ballard was here. But just the fact that question is asked and I don't immediately jump out of my seat with 3 or 4 answers, to me, that's an indictment of the era that you've had. And
I mean, that team had T.Y. Hilton, Frank Gore, Moncrief, Doyle, Dwayne Allen. Come on.
I guess if Taylor's healthy, certainly, and is a part of your future, he would be better than Gore at that age. But again, I mean, is Taylor a part of your football team? That's unfortunately, I feel like a legitimate question here. So that to me says everything that you kind of need to know. When the results, we know the results. No division titles in that span, 1 playoff win, all of those things. But when I start to think about it and think, you know what, maybe O-line, I guess, linebacker, healthy Leonard, okay, I'll probably go there. For the most part, the Colts just kind of had guys at linebacker in recent years and a healthy, or I guess in that, late kind of Grigson era, and a healthy Leonard obviously changes that, of course. Is Leonard healthy? That is and is Leonard back to his normal self is probably the better question to be asked there. When you have to ask that question, and again, answers don't jump out.
Right. That's the answer.
That to me is a little bit like IU football with Tom Allen right now. And in year 6, the over/under on wins is 3.5.
I sat next to Grigson at the Music City Bowl with Lamar Jackson and Myles Garrett. Were you like that? I don't know why I thought of that. Grigson, I don't know.
Grigson and I have some history.
Did he say your name? Did he utter your name?
We have some history.
Kevin.
Okay, well, to get into that at some point, I want to play.
Not a lot of people call me Kevin these days.
Well, you're right. That's why the name of the show is KB and Andy. Right? I call you KB. I figured you would tell me if I was wrong.
I must say, when he said Kevin, I was kind of like, oh my gosh, did I forget to clean up my room? There was a little bit of that when he said that.
Kevin.
Clean up your room, Kevin. I wanted to play. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I felt like this is needed to kind of
go ahead.
Bow tie our Alec versus Alex. From Alec. Literally, Alec Gray. I'm sorry for giving out your last name, Alec. It's on Twitter. I felt like we need to clarify it wasn't Alec Pierece. He goes, I give Chris Ballard a pass on calling Alec Pierece Alex. I've been friends with people for decades and still accidentally do it to me.
Yeah, but he, they're also not being paid millions of dollars, right? He's also your number 2 wide receiver.
Andy, if the boss is calling you by one name, everybody in the organization probably should just follow suit.
I'm with you. Yeah. You know what? Sorry, Pierce. You're Alex now. I don't know what to tell you. Both of these are shorties here, and they have the question, so it's a little bit difficult. But yesterday, Chris Ballard was asked if there's a situation where Jonathan Taylor could still be an Indianapolis Colt.
Scenario where Jonathan Taylor plays for the Colts again.
Of course there is. Of course.
There was that one that I found interesting, and then any indication that Taylor, hey, yeah, I'm ready to come back.
Himself, given any indication he's going to be willing to play for the Colts in the future?
We'll keep working through it.
The second one doesn't give you a lot of, if you're a Jonathan Taylor guy that's got a jersey right now, yeah, we'll work through it. Is he going to play again? Well, we'll work through it.
To be fair to Ballard, I think that's a hard one for Ballard to answer. That's where Taylor, I think, needs to, provide those sorts of answers and those sorts of comments. But that happening, I'm not holding my breath for it anytime soon. All right, on the other side, the man that's been covering this franchise since the Mayflowers came to Indy, that would be Mike Chappell. He joins us next here. Wake up call, KB and Andy on 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
It's the wake-up call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5, The Fan.
Mike Chappell going to join us here in just a second. Before we get to Chap, we asked the question before the break, and I guess listener Kirk asked the question, in the Ballard era, where are they better at from a positional standpoint? What positions are better than when he took over? To me, this answer from Jay is the exact answer that I should have given. Jay, you should have my job. Jay goes, the only spots the roster is possibly better in after 6 years are non-premium positions. Also, the only person who thinks the skill positions are good is Chris Ballard, and that is the problem.
I would say the Chris Ballard, they have enough weapons, is probably the answer, where he's the only one that feels that way, right? Like, there's, like, even percentage of other answers other fans will be able to ride with, but that one I feel like is pretty black or white. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I think that is, again, perfectly well said there from Jay.
All right, Mike Chappell joins us. Let's go. Sorry, I thought you were going to bring him in.
No,
Mike Chappell joins us, CBS 4, Fox 59. Mike, I've not met you in person, I don't believe, but great to meet you here on the radio. So let's jump in, as obviously we've been talking all morning about Chris Ballard and what he said or did not say about Jonathan Taylor. You've covered a lot of these press conferences, so you're sitting there yesterday, 30 minutes of questions that Ballard fielded. Most of them were about Jonathan Taylor. What were your main takeaways, one or two takeaways, main takeaways that you had as you're sitting there watching everyone ask questions about what's going on with Jonathan Taylor?
Probably that he's a lot more optimistic than I am, than a lot of people are, that this relationship can be patched. Never say never, because things change, but for anything to change, somebody has to give, and the Colts aren't going to give. You know, they're not going to say, oh, by the way, we signed Jonathan to a 3-year, $40 million contract extension. And so that means that Taylor needs to give, and I don't know, from how things have gone, I haven't seen that any indication that he would swallow his pride and say, okay, I will just play out the last, part of the season, and then we'll see what happens in the off season. I just don't see that. So that's the main thing. Is I understand. It's funny how I think it was Jim Irsay on TV in the preseason game said that it's Chris's job to calm the waters, I think is what he used, and that's what Chris was doing. I just don't see how things change until somebody changes their stance, and I don't see that.
Chap, appreciate the time. When Chris Ballard talks about the ankle situation yesterday, I mean, he brought that up on several occasions. Should we be putting more stock into Jonathan Taylor's physical health, or maybe lack thereof?
You mean that if he's actually not healthy?
Yes.
I'm not there, because I think that if they gave him 3 years, $40 million today, that he's practicing tomorrow.
Would he have an extension if he were healthy?
That's a good question. No. I think there has been. It's impacted it, I think, but a lot of what he said yesterday. Remember, it was 2 or 3 times, and then James asked him about, well, this is a star player. Why don't you pay him? And he said, we won 4 games. And also, and we'll never get the answer to this, is how has the new coaching staff changed the outlook of this roster? All of a sudden we've got a new set of eyes on everybody. Not so much defense, because Gus is still here, but you've got a head coach and an offensive guy who maybe he doesn't think this guy is what you guys think he is, or that guy is what you think he is. Maybe he thinks that, at his core, you don't pay a running back $13 million. I don't know. But a couple times he has mentioned, he did in his pre-camp press conference and yesterday about, new coaching staff. And so what did Shane Steichen, when they sat there in the meetings, the evaluations of players when they got to Taylor, what did Shane say? Hey, great player, but, we don't need, I can make my offense work with not a top-tier player, but certainly a good one, which right now they don't have. So I always wonder what Shane Steichen's influence has been in this, but I think there's, people don't want to hear it, but situations are unique, and this is the old imperfect storm for Jonathan Taylor. It just is. The timing, I've always said, the most important thing in life is timing. Whatever you do, And right now, this is the absolute worst time for him to be wanting an extension, and that includes the injury.
Chap, when you look at your reporting, actually, and again, Mike Chappell's with the CBS 4, Fox 59, you reported that, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, that the Colts were not offered a second-round pick. The third-round pick was the best they were offered. Is that correct?
I was told they weren't offered a 1 or a 2. Well, and if I'm not mistaken, I thought the Miami GM yesterday said they didn't offer anything. Maybe I misread the quotes. He said they talked, but I thought he said that they didn't offer anything.
Yeah, I thought it was like nothing legit. I felt like I heard it, and it sounded very semantic-y to me.
Yeah, you're right. And you know, when it's out there that teams have interest, well, is that because the team called you or you called the team? So, but no, I was told that they held firm. They didn't get, they could have traded him. Any team, in my mind, any team that called the Colts about interest in Taylor had to be willing to sign him to some level of an extension, or why are you calling? You think Taylor's going to go there and play, $4.3 million this year? No. So I don't think that would, and I initially thought that would have been the problem, but it wasn't. It was that they weren't going to dump him. And I mean, Chris mentioned that 2 or 3 times. We weren't going to let him just walk out the door. And I wasn't totally convinced they weren't going to do that, just because and I asked Chris this yesterday about, you've got a player here now that clearly doesn't want to be here, and now you're making him be here. Is there a concern of negative impact on the locker room? And I think he sort of said they'll work through all that or whatever. He said that's the first time he's been through it. So, no, but they had the chance to unload him, and they just weren't going to send him away. So now that means they've got to find a way to make it work. Although keep in mind, the Tuesday deadline for a trade was self-imposed so they could get their record, so they could get the roster set and know at least initially what you're doing with him. They could trade him tomorrow. They could, they can trade you up until October 31st. So that's the only, disheartening thing, maybe from the outside, maybe a little bit from the inside, is yesterday, what they did Tuesday didn't really move the needle. It just sort of hit the pause button on Jonathan Taylor, and he's not going to be here for, play for 4 games. But this thing can change in a heartbeat. All you need to have is a team probably closer to the deadline, where a team loses a player or whatever. They think they really are one player away, and then they make that, decision and try to really get Taylor. But yeah, I was disappointed that we didn't get a resolution just because it, and Ballard mentioned it is, it's too bad we've been talking about Taylor because, there have been a lot of good stories in camp. And that's what happens when you've got such a player sort of sucking the oxygen out of the room, is you don't talk about anything else most of the time.
And Andy did have that Chris Greer clip, so let's just play that.
I think this is the one. So let's just play it.
This is a Dolphins GM yesterday.
Jonathan is valuable, and at the end of the day, we're not. I'm not just going to let him walk out the building. I'm not going to do. That's not the best thing for the Colts and the organization.
So that's the Ballard clip. Again, Chris Greer's comments. That's the one. It was just general talks, Greer said. A lot of the stuff being reported, like I tell you guys, 95% of it's wrong. We had some discussions, but it's no different than any player that's ever released or available that we know about. In terms of being close, there was nothing really close. So that was Chris Greer again.
He didn't say we didn't offer this. He just sort of.
I don't see that here. Then he added Jalen Waddle would not be available to anybody.
Gotcha, Mike. Mike Chappell with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. Most likely, how this plays out, Mike, the most likely scenario is now what, in your opinion?
I don't know. It was funny, we were talking yesterday, we're trying to get straight what happens. He's going to miss 4 games. At some point, he has to pass a physical. He just does. I don't see a reality where this team allows him to stay on PUP all season and be paid. Now, the downside to him, I mean, he gets paid, but being on PUP all year, his contract tolls because he's got to play. He's got to be on the active roster for 6 games. So at some point, there's got to be movement to where he's no longer on PUP. You know, does the time come when, again, the team says, we believe he's healthy, he refuses to either take or pass a physical, and then, again, then you go nuclear with, it'd be the worst-case scenario, but, teams can suspend players. The Colts did. I've talked to Rick Venturi about it when he just got set up with Eric Dickerson for refusing to practice. A little different because he had passed the physical. But that is an option, and it's certainly one you don't want to go to because then the relationship it's War of the Roses relationship where it just doesn't. You're cutting the house in half. So, but at some point he's got to practice, and if the team, as I've been told, believes he's healthy, and again I'm not the only person that thinks if he got an extension or a trade,
right,
he would have been on the practice field, but. Yep. Something he's got to practice, and then the next move takes place, whether he plays. It's so hard in my mind to make an employee work. Kevin could be PO'd about something and doesn't want to come into work, and they say, no, contract or whatever. You're gonna be here. Well, you will. What's the old line? I'm here so I don't get fined. That's not a good situation at all. And if a player is concerned about getting an injury before the extension, it just brings into all those things into play. That's why I just don't. Irreparably broken, I don't know, but this looks like a relationship that's really going to be hard to repair. It just seems that way.
Again, we'll see health-wise where Zach Moss is at as we are about a week and a half from the season opening.
Yeah, right now they've got 2 running backs?
Two. Yeah, 2 healthy. 2 more on the practice squad. We'll see how the veteran running back situation plays out as well. Chap, I'm looking at the roster yesterday. We see Jelani Woods go on injured reserve, which means he's going to miss the first 4 weeks. What do you think is the deepest non-tight end position on this team?
The deepest?
Yeah.
Quarterback, I guess, and that's with a rookie quarterback. Linebacker, I guess, because you don't use that many. The defensive line, they got bodies, and I like maybe 6 of them. But
you think Leonard goes back to playing every? Sorry to interrupt, but when you brought up linebacker, you think Leonard goes back to playing every snap, or do you think EJ Speed will kind of rotate in with him for whatever every 3rd series or something?
I think they rotate whatever that is, at least maybe a month until you really know if Leonard's back. And I think it'd be kind of crazy for anyone to think that come September 10th he's back to being the maniac. I think I don't think he would say that. So, but that's why you do need EJ Speed, and it's been kind of fun to watch him kind of develop, sort of like Zaire Franklin did from late pick to none of the contract and all that. But they need that. It's just that I talk about the depth because they basically only play 2. I mean, if they're healthy because of so much. Nickel package, but this is a roster that you look at. It's so uncharacteristic of Chris Ballard because normally it's really a pretty good roster top to bottom. You certainly have been missing stars outside of Taylor and I guess Pittman. I mean, and certainly Buck and a few others. But there's so many areas where. If a frontline player goes down, there is, to me, a pretty significant drop-off to the next guy. And that's not always been the case. And that's why – and people get hurt. It's 100%. So I'm concerned about that. If Anthony Richardson gets hurt or whatever, Minshew is more than competent. And that even sounds like a backhanded compliment. But I really worry about positions that if a guy, Bernard Ryman, even Kwity Paye, and we're still waiting for Kwity to step up, or Kenny Moore. My goodness, the drop-off in reliable experience is pretty dramatic.
Mike Chappell with us on the Payless Liquors hotline here on the Fan on this Thursday. Last one for me, he was, fielding questions yesterday. Was Ballard. He stood up, basically said, yes, Anthony Richardson does have enough weapons. And KB, you ask him about, will this stunt the growth of Anthony Richardson not having Jonathan Taylor? And he said no, and he brought up Andrew Luck and everything else. Those two, Mike, left me scratching my head. Enough weapons and how this affects Anthony Richardson. What did you make of those two answers?
Well, it's kind of what he's got to say.
Right.
He can't say, "Yeah, boy, this is really going to kill the kid." You can't say that. But this is not Andrew Luck. First of all, he's not Andrew Luck. Luck was pretty good. I mean, Luck was a notch below Peyton Manning. He was, and he was so much better as a rookie. Well, I think it was like 8 comeback wins by the team. But I just go back to when we talked to Irsay, and we've talked to Ballard before also, but when we talked to Irsay in July, and he kept mentioning a couple of times, I really envision, I'm hopeful that Jonathan can be what Marshall Faulk was to Peyton. Well, Peyton, go back and look at Peyton's supporting cast. It was pretty good. I mean, he had some Hall of Famers. Edgerton wasn't there yet, but he has a pretty good team. And now you've got, 3 receivers you sort of like, but not over the top like. Running backs, you don't want to pile on these guys, but you're really hoping Zach Moss gets back because he's the one that's really done the most. Deion Jackson's really taken that next step and all that, and I understand what he's saying. Tight ends, I guess, but Will Mallory's been hurt. Mo Ali Cox he's missed as much time as anybody in camp. So, and Kylan Granson has played well, but this isn't putting your rookie quarterback with 13 starts and 400 passes in college in the right stead because it's Taylor makes that much of a difference on defensive approach. If you're a coordinator, are you worried about Richardson and Zach Moss, or are you worried about Richardson and Jonathan Taylor? Well, it's obvious. So this is not a best situation for the quarterback. He tried to spin it that way, but he had to.
Mike Chappell, CBS 4, Fox 59. Chap, I know it's an early start to this Thursday, so
I set my alarm today.
I know. I always feel bad asking you, but you're just too good not to ask. So I apologize.
Well, whenever we talk about this, it's like I sleep till 11 o'clock. I don't.
You just said that you set alarm. You and Jake Query are on the same sleeping patterns.
I set it for 8:30. I normally start getting, because I stay up. I stay up till like midnight or 12:30 because I just do. And I've lived long enough that if I want to sleep in until 8:30, doggone, I'm going to.
Amen.
But
good for you.
It's not 11 o'clock.
Amen to that. Well, Chap, once a month, we always like to hear from you. So I appreciate you doing that, and I will see you over at the complex here in a bit.
Looking forward to it. Be well, guys.
That's the one and only, the great Mike Chappell right there on the Payless Liquors hotline, giving us a ring from Beech Grove. Again, the Chap reporting from this week, nothing better than a third rounder from an offer standpoint. And then he had a team source tell him that Jonathan Taylor is having a hold-in, which when asked about that yesterday, Chris Ballard was adamant that that is not true and that ankle pain is the reason why he is on the physically unable to perform list.
Yeah, that was the most newsworthy thing. But you guys did make Mike Chappell sound like he wakes up at lunchtime.
He does, Mark.
There was a little bit of that, and I don't know anything, so I'm just like, okay.
I think we've had him on a handful of times, maybe over our 3 years.
Chap does a lot for our station here, so I feel like you certainly hear him in other places.
Leave him for JMV in the afternoon.
Yeah,
leave him for him.
But again, when Chap has great stuff, I just go up to him like, Chap, please. And then he usually abides. So thank you to Mike Chappell for that. Again, Zach Osterman going to join us here in less than 10 minutes. IU and Ohio State. Our coverage will begin on WIBC coming up at 2:30 on Saturday. 29.5 was last I saw on the line on that one with Ohio State. I think it's great that IU opens up the season with Ohio State. Get it out of the way.
Just get the 42-13 out of the way.
Get it out of the way.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess it's better than doing that than Louisiana Tech. Although, is Louisiana Tech good? Weren't they good a couple years ago, like in their conference? I can't remember. I tried to go to a bum team. I went to Louisiana Tech, and they might not be a terrible team. So there you go. Get it out of the way. Yeah.
Shout out to Hugh Davis, Max Davis, a legend I went to high school. I think his little brother plays for Louisiana Tech.
Okay.
So, yeah, we will talk IU football coming up here. And a few with Zach Osterman. We'll push the pop quiz to later. Before all of that, let's do a morning check.
The Morning Checkdown. Omaha! On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Yeah, the big one last night, or actually yesterday afternoon, Reds winners 4-1. That does snap a 3-game losing streak. Did not want to get swept by the Giants. Now 1 game back. All in all, not a great road trip. 500 at 5-5, but still just 1 game back of that final wild card. The Giants right now the leaders for that final spot. Arizona half game back of them. The Reds off today, KB. A little day off.
Well deserved day off after the rare victory.
Thursday off.
For the Red Legs. It's a big one starting tomorrow, doubleheader with the Reds and the Cubs from Cincinnati. Speaking of tomorrow, Team USA and Tyrese Halliburton and company will get back in action. They move on to the next round. So we had 32 teams to start the World Cup. It's down to 16. As long as U.S. beats Montenegro tomorrow, they should advance then to the final 8. And
they don't have any pros on their team, right? Am I stupid?
I think they've got Vucevic.
Oh, okay.
The Bulls center.
Okay,
yeah.
There you go.
Nikola Vucevic. Mark probably hates how much money he makes.
Yep. They re-signed
You've got a Zach LaVine, Lonzo Ball shirt on, right?
I do, yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know. I didn't even notice
NBA
that.
Jam shirt. Someone gave me an NBA Jam shirt with the Bulls on. I was like, sure. It's got what used to be Lonzo Ball on here before his leg injuries, so kind of like a nostalgic view now.
Does he play another game in his career?
I don't know. He's trying to show off to Stephen A. Smith that he can bend. I'm like, you gotta do a lot more than that in basketball.
That he can get out of a chair. It was him getting up out of a chair, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of other basketball items, the Fever back in action tomorrow night. 5 to go in their season, so you can catch them over at Gamebridge Fieldhouse. And from a women's sports standpoint, we mentioned the Fever, 92,003. That was the attendance last night. Is it Memorial Stadium? In Lincoln?
Nebraska Stadium? I don't know. I can look that up. Nebraska Football Stadium.
92,003 for a volleyball match between the Cornhuskers and Nebraska Omaha. Quite the scene last night, to say the least. By the way, I asked last hour, why is Nebraska obsessed with volleyball? It's not invented there. Someone said it was invented in Massachusetts. Was everything invented in Massachusetts, I guess?
I mean, I guess.
Our founding fathers invented everything.
You relying on a texter, tweeter, whatever. Huntington Bank Stadium, so it's got the name on it, so I don't know if that's, Memorial Stadium, but now it's got a name on it. It's got a sponsor name on it.
That's so cool for them to, experience that, run out, and see all those fans.
Did they win?
That's a good question.
I was wondering if they did all that and they lost in straight sets. Romeo Langford.
3-0.
There you go. He signs an Exhibit 10 contract with the Utah Jazz, and Joe Burrow back at practice for the Bengals. Obviously, he had the calf. He has, the contract situation. Will he get paid? Obviously, he will, but Burrow back at practice yesterday. Jamar Chase said he looked pretty good. Oh, one more swoosh.
Yeah, we got IndyCar. It starts a stretch here of 3 straight races to end the season. Obviously, Scott Dixon winning last week at Gateway. They will be in Portland this week. It's out on the West Coast for the final 2. Sunday at 3 o'clock, our coverage will begin there.
Jake's out there, right? He's leaving.
Jake will be heading out there.
He'll be leaving out there to Portland.
Laguna Seca, I think, is the season finale. I've said this before about IndyCar. They got to bump it up to where this is the season finale. Next week,
before football,
they're going to have a 3 o'clock start time for the season finale.
Right when the witching hour's on.
Right when, Anthony Richardson and the Colts are coming out for the second half.
Yeah, it's we getting close to the witching hour.
And
Come on.
I think it starts next year is when you've got the season finale, I should say, moving to Nashville. So that'll be a little different. And I think that makes it total sense.
Yeah, $2,000 hotel rooms. Have fun with that one. I know Jake doesn't pay, but have fun with that one.
On the other side, Zach Osterman, Indianapolis Star, covers the Indiana Hoosiers. He joins us next. Talk a little IU football.
DMV.
Weekdays 3 till 6.
On 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Find out games you don't want to play. You are the only one that needs to know. I'll keep you my dirty little secret. Don't tell anyone.
It's the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Final 30 minutes on a Thursday. Catch the podcast. Good God, we've talked for so long. Chris Ballard, the Colts, obviously, Jonathan Taylor, and,
you see what Mark did
so
there?
much more. What, the dirty little secret?
Dirty little secret.
You guys have an underlying conversation because you've worked together for so long.
This is my.
Who's our next guest?
This is my brain, and Zach Osterman is joining us next. And the dirty little secret is Tom Allen not revealing quarterbacks, kickers, the whole shebang heading into their Ohio State game. So my brain works that I need to find something about secrets.
Well, I like that.
Beautiful re-entry there.
That's nicely produced. That's what you say. It is college football time. We'll have Florida, Utah tonight, 7:30, right here on the Fan. A busy weekend as well. Virginia, Tennessee, West Virginia, Penn State Saturday, right here on the Fan, and then IU. They're in action. That coverage at 2:30 on Saturday over on IBC. Let's get Zach Osterman up here. Talk some IU football on the Payless Liquors hotline. For people who don't know, on my old radio show, I had Zach on every Thursday. So, Zach, it's a Thursday. I'm just an hour and a half up the road. Buddy, how are you, man?
I was going to say, where did you come from?
I'm here. It's good to talk to you. So
I'm sure this was on Twitter, but since Elon took TweetDeck away from me, I can barely follow anything anymore. So
oh, come on.
For not realizing.
You're not going to pay the $9 or $10 a month? The IndyStar won't help you out there? Come on. What's happening, Zach?
No. We're going to leave that to one side.
Yeah. I figured that would be the case. Well, tell us. I mean, I guess I can almost understand the quarterback. I'm not going to reveal the quarterback if you're Tom Allen. But the damn kicker, what's going on in Bloomington? What do you think happens at quarterback, and why is Tom Allen being secretive about his kicker, I guess?
Yeah, listen, I'm kind of two contrasting minds with the reporter in me and also possibly just the common sense in me says this isn't really necessary. Do you gain that much of a competitive advantage from it? On the other hand, I also just don't think it matters that much. I've had people tell me, it dampens excitement for your season. I don't know if I buy that. I just, it sort of feels like one of those things that we get wrapped up in because you got to get wrapped up in something this time of year. And again, I would advocate just saying, here's our two deep, nothing's ever fully settled. Guys get hurt. Guys underperform, whatever. But here's what we're looking at for now. As for quarterback, I think, I really have not been able in what we were allowed to see of preseason to separate them. I think they are slightly different players. I think, and Tom Allen even, will admit that. I think he, last night he said Brendan Sorsby, has a lot of arm talent. He said Taven Jackson's got a lot of moxie, was I think the word he used on his radio show. I'd also say Jackson is probably a little bit better throwing on the run, at least in what I've seen. Might be a little bit more athletic. Of course, people will remember not just his football career at Center Grove, but his basketball career and how good of a basketball player he was. I suppose still is. I guess I should just assume that. The one thing that has crept into my mind, and I wrote this today. This has only come at me because I feel like I do more opposing radio Ohio State week than I do basically the entire rest of the season. And basically every Ohio State whatever person I've talked to has asked if Indiana would play both. And Tom Allen has always been pretty adamantly anti-two quarterback. He's had situations in the past where he's had quarterback battles, and he's been pretty clear that he wants, whoever the starter is, if they get pulled for performance reasons and the guy goes in, that if he makes that, he wants the starter basically, first of all, to just play with the confidence of not looking over his shoulder. And second of all, that if there is a change made, he wants to stick with that change and he doesn't want to waffle about it. But the only exception to that was Michael Penix's true freshman year, when Indiana sprinkled him in, but that was much more just about getting Penix on the field a little bit. It wasn't about, necessarily sort of the true sort of 2 QB system. The one that always comes to mind for me is what Steve Spurrier did with Brock Berlin and Doug Johnson at Florida, where literally you didn't know which one was going out every series. So that is the background for me saying this. I guess I sort of wonder if they'd play both. And if there is so little room between them, and it really does appear that there is very little room between them, and it's not like one's really young and one's got more experience, or one clearly has. I think they're both good quarterbacks. I also think they both need some work, as a lot of redshirt freshmen do. But it's not like one can throw the ball 85 yards, standing still. I wonder if there's an extent to which Indiana might try to sort through both of them, especially if you have a situation in the Ohio State game where, and I'm not saying Indiana's going into that game expecting to lose, but if you have a situation where maybe that game, the gap grows a little bit, do you just try the other one and see what happens? Or the flip side is, if one guy runs out there first and Indiana's, still down 3 points at the end of the third quarter, then maybe your answer is, well, this guy seems to get the team moving. This guy seems to, whatever he's doing in practice, in games, this guy's making a difference. I don't know. I really, at this point, I feel like I'm just sort of second-guessing myself. And I probably just need to stop worrying about it, because we're all going to know in about 48 hours anyway. And as I said, I think to you, Andy, in your previous life, history tells us Indiana's going to need them both anyway.
Right. Because
Indiana's had a lot of difficulty with the quarterback injuries. So I think we're probably just at the point where we need to play the games. People just need actual games to talk about and not to worry about position battles and preseason rankings and anything like that.
Shout out to the Brock Berlin reference there, Zach. That was outstanding.
It really was.
On this Thursday morning. Great quarterback insight there from Zach Osterman from the Indianapolis Star. Zach, so much of the root of the Colts' issues last year were offensive line related. I think you could say the same thing about IU, frankly. What has changed up front, if anything, personnel, coaching-wise, from last year?
Yeah, I mean, what's changed is Bob Bostad, who Indiana hired from Wisconsin to coach that offensive line. Obviously, Indiana fired Darren Hiller midway through last season. It is, I mean, listen, again, this stuff's got to be proven in games. We can all sit here and talk about how good it looks or how good we think it might be or whatever. But it really does seem like that group has responded to Bostad. I mean, it has looked better, visibly better to me. A little bit in the spring, but certainly in fall camp. You know, I've said many times now that I think Indiana's better along both lines of scrimmage. On defense, that's been because of a defensive line rotation that's been largely remade by some intriguing transfers. On offense, or offensive line, I should say, there's really only one transfer that's probably going to have an immediate impact, and that's Max Longman from UMass. There's a couple other guys that might work their way up the depth chart as the season goes along. But a lot of the guys Indiana's going to lean on early in the season are guys that have been around, like Mike Kadick and Zach Carpenter. Matthew Bedford is healthy again. Khalil Benson, I think, came on toward the end of last season. Some younger guys like Carter Smith and Bray Lynch that are starting to sort of take steps forward. The difference is if Indiana is better along that line, and I think it is, the difference is Bostad. And obviously he had a lot of success at Wisconsin, multiple stints as offensive line coach there. It's always sort of intrigued me that he was an offensive line coach, and then he got moved over to inside linebackers, and all his inside linebackers were pretty good, and then he went back to offensive line. I mean, that just sort of, I guess, it feels like that just sort of says he's a good football coach. He's got a good football mind, and he knows how to connect with and motivate and improve his players, regardless of position. But if that group is better, I think a lot of it is going to come down to Bostad, and I think Tom Allen has spoken very highly of him. Walt Bell has spoken very highly of him, and it does seem like his players have responded to him.
It's 3:30 on Saturday. Indiana and Ohio State, 4-touchdown underdog plus the Hoosiers here in this opener. Zach, when I look at the win-loss over-under and I see 3.5, I mean, when you are having a 12-game schedule and I see 3.5, I don't care who the program is. I'm like, that is such a low number. Do you think 3.5 is like an accurate depiction of how expectations should be viewed? Like, is a 4-win season
theoretically better than what expectations should be based off everything that you've looked into and seen in practice?
I think I would have said 3.5 sounded about right a month or two ago. I always have this question I sort of ask myself around expectations ahead of an IU football season, and this is just something I've sort of developed over the years. Do I think that at minimum Indiana is good enough to be 5-6 going into the Purdue game? The idea being at minimum, barring, of course, a car crash with injuries, some sort of disaster, not totally dissimilar to what we saw in 2021. Do I think Indiana is good enough to at least still have bowl eligibility on the table going into the final week of the season? I would not have said yes to that question before fall camp, and you always have to be careful to draw too many conclusions from fall camp. Guys are playing each other every day. Guys know certain elements of schemes and stuff's controlled. And, one of the many things, for example, I brought up in this quarterback battle is if Indiana really wants to keep some of this option stuff that it was working with Dexter Williams at the end of last season, then I have no idea how good either of those quarterbacks is going to be at it because they weren't allowed to get hit in fall camp. So there's stuff that we're just not going to know until we see Indiana on the field. I am probably closer to saying yes to that question about 5-6 going into the Purdue game than I was a month ago. Again, I do think Indiana is better than I expected it to be along the line of scrimmage, both sides of the ball. And with respect to quarterback play, with respect to anything else, that is the quickest way to getting better in college football, is just improving your blocking and improving your defensive line play. Now, I think, win or lose, it's going to be interesting to see Indiana, both of those lines against Ohio State. You've got an offensive line that's, of course, got to deal with, what is perennially one of the most talented defenses in the country. And you've got a defensive line that has got to make life easier for a young and inexperienced secondary against some of the top receivers in the country, but also a defensive line that's going to be facing an offense with 2 new tackles, a new center, and a new starting quarterback. And maybe they disrupt a little bit? Can they slow Ohio State down? Can they get Ohio State out of rhythm? I just think, Gary Danielson said something. We got a chance to talk to Danielson and Nessler yesterday, and Danielson said basically that Indiana is going to be judged almost just by how well it plays. I think the word he used was, how well it survives and how well it plays. And he was essentially saying there are results for Indiana out of a game like Ohio State, especially in a season opener, with all the turnover on the roster the last couple of years. There are results other than a win that are still positives to spin forward through the season. And that's not moral victories, but it is saying, as I think I've said to you, Andy, you only play Ohio State once.
Right.
And, once they're off the schedule, you can live with that. And if you can do some positive things, especially along those lines of scrimmage, then suddenly you maybe feel like that 3.5 win number is a little bit low for a team that has a lot of much more winnable games in theory starting week 2.
Zach Osterman from the Star with us on the Payless Liquors hotline on the Fan on a Thursday. Well, the pop quiz coming up here in just a few moments. Listen, we have to ask this question. This is the last one for me. It's a Tom Allen question. I feel like it's, before the season, we're talking expectations and everything else, over-unders. I mean, if they ever went under that number, you would basically go the last 2 months of the season winning like one game, KB. That's exactly what Indiana would do. He's kind of redone his deal, but still, Indiana would owe him, upwards of $20 million if they got rid of him after this season. It goes down December of 2024. What's the read in the room? If they win, 4 games, something like that, maybe even 5 if I bump it up to that, and they could be, maybe making a bowl when they look at the last couple games of the season. What do you think of this season and the future of Tom Allen?
Yeah, it's possible the Big Ten media deal has changed this calculus, and it's just hard for us to know until we see Indiana do it. That buyout still seems steep to me at the end of the 2023 season. I think it would take something, pretty disastrous, to be honest. What I do think and what I have said is, there's sort of when you are, let's say, financially safe or contractually safe, and then there's also just sort of when your fan base still believes in you and will still invest in you and will still give you the benefit of the doubt of getting behind you, building some momentum, et cetera. And there's plenty of coaches that lose that long before ultimately they lose their jobs. I never like saying a guy's coaching for his job. I don't think Tom Allen probably is this season, just based on my history with IU as an athletics department, and obviously also understanding some of the financial challenges that may be on the horizon in terms of losing fundraising dollars to NIL, in terms of possibly, frankly, having to start building a pot of money that you use to pay players at some point in the next 3 to 5, 7 years. I don't know exactly how far away we are from that, but a lot of people, including Tom Allen, think it's coming and it should probably just get here. I do wonder, though, and I do suspect that there's an extent to which Tom Allen is kind of coaching for his future with his fans, and that there you can get to a place where if Indiana can't show improvement off of last season, and I'm not sure exactly what that looks like to people. Is it 5-7, but you win both trophy games? Is it 6-6? Is it a bowl win? I'm not totally sure. I think you get a more varied sort of, if you screened 5,000 IU fans, I think you get a more varied sort of range of answers than you'd expect. But I think unless there is some measure of progress shown this season, I think Tom Allen gets to a place where maybe his fan base starts to check out in a really sort of meaningful and possibly kind of calcified way, and that's when you may start talking about long-term change coming.
Zach, we only have about 30 seconds left. I wanted to sneak in a quick basketball question. One scholarship left for this coming season. Are you under the impression that they will not use that on someone outside of the program right now?
Unless something's changed, they can't, because you have to be enrolled, and unless IU's academic calendar and policies have changed, we are in the third week of classes now, or the second. I can't remember which. Either way, the point is, I think either Monday or Wednesday of the second week of classes is when you're allowed to add and it's your last day to add and drop. And so
got it.
I don't think you can roll for the fall semester. So I don't think they can at this point. I could be wrong there, but that would be if something has changed.
Interesting. Zach, great stuff as always. You cover IU athletics tremendously.
Appreciate it, Zach.
We look forward to having you on here later this fall as well.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Zach Osterman, Payless Liquors Hotline Pop Quiz on the other side, 317-239-1070.
Tonight at 7:30 on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Have you studied? Can you handle the pressure? Sharpen your pencils. It's time for the Pop Quiz with KB and Andy. Brought to you by Jiffy Lube, Indiana's favorite oil change since 1985.
All right, final segment, Pop Quiz time. Scotty in studio. I'm looking at some of these questions. There's a couple here that people are going to be able to get, but we can't yap too much.
Speed dating version of the Pop Quiz.
We got to be efficient. We got to do this. So, do you want to guess the number? Do you want to throw out a number?
4, Mark.
4. That is Marcus.
Marcus, good morning. Welcome. Good luck.
Good morning. Go.
Apologies for the transactional Pop Quiz.
No chit
We're up
chat,
against
Marcus.
it. I'm sorry.
Too much Jonathan Taylor talk. All right, I'll go first. Question number 1, Marcus. We are a week away from the NFL opener for the 2023 season. That game will take place in Kansas City. Who will the Chiefs face in this year's regular season opener? Is it A, the Broncos, B, the Niners, C, the Lions, D, the Buffalo Bills?
I'm going to say the Niners.
Cover your kneecaps, right? All right, number 2 here, Marcus. University of Nebraska set a world record for attendance at a women's sporting event last night. Which sport drew 92,000 plus to Memorial Stadium in Lincoln?
Volleyball.
There we go. Number 3, Marcus. The Atlanta Braves hit 3 more home runs in Colorado yesterday. That gives them 250 homers this season. That is the most in franchise history, and it's still August. The 132 games it's taken the Braves to reach 250 homers is the second fewest in MLB history. Which team needed fewer games to reach 250 home runs in a season? Is it A, the 2019 Astros, B, the 2019 New York Yankees, C, the 1997 Seattle Mariners, or D, the 2019 Minnesota Twins?
I'm going to go with the 19 Yankees.
Okay.
All right, number 4 here. On this day in 1997, Marcus, the Tennessee Oilers, now the Titans, played their first regular season game since leaving Houston, defeating the Raiders 24-21. What city was that game played? Oakland, Memphis, L.A., or Nashville?
Oakland.
All right, last question for you, Marcus. Who was the first Cincinnati Red to hit 40 homers in a season? Is it A, Ted Kluzinski, B, Wally Post, C, Frank McCormick, D, Johnny Bench?
Only one on that list I've ever even heard of is Johnny.
Former IU football player, Scotty?
Kind of
that. The guy out there is replacing the items in the vending machines. Do you think he'd allow me to grab something? Or would that not be allowed?
For free, or are you going to give him quarters
candy, right?
on the way out?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'll take a bag of
Ask
chips.
him if he can change it to like credit card acceptance.
I know. I have.
Oh, it's only cash?
Yeah, I have thought about that. Okay, the effort by Marcus. To be fair, we put Marcus behind the 8 ball. We asked for some efficiency. He did provide that. I believe the only one he got right was the volleyball game last night in Nebraska, correct?
You blew it!
Yeah.
It's Chiefs and Lions a week from tonight.
Yeah, Man Campbell got the Chiefs and Lions. That was question number 1. He got number 2 right. The Atlanta Braves and the home runs. You went with the 2019 Yankees. I probably would have done the same. The answer is actually the 2019 Minnesota Twins. They did it in 129 games. Let me do the rest here. Number 4, Tennessee played when they were moving. They played in Memphis in the Liberty Bowl. And the answer to number 5 was Ted Kluzinski. So there you go. Did I mess it up again? Kluzinski. Excuse me.
You guys want to guess the early line? Chiefs and Lions a week from tonight.
Is it more than 3.5?
Chiefs 5.5.
Chiefs 5.5. Let me go. Let me go less. Let me go 4.5.
Chiefs favored by 6.5.
It's a lot of points.
The over-under on that one is 54. That is easily the biggest over-under as we head into week 1.
I'll take the Lions in that one. I'll take the Chiefs to win, but I'll take the Lions to maybe keep that close. All you need is a couple scores earlier. Why am I taking Jared Goff on the road? I have no idea.
Jags favored by 4.5 over the Colts for next Sunday. That over under 45. So if you do the math there, a little 24-20? Jags win?
I'll take Jacksonville to cover that probably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, tons of Jonathan Taylor stuff. Chris Ballard clips on the podcast. Everybody check that out. We'll round out the week one final time. Everybody have a great Thursday. See you tomorrow.
Luxair is the intelligent way to keep your home comfortable. Luxair units